What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, and general appreciation of TV, past and new. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Serialized at MLHT2452 to see what all I'm watching. So, way back when, and by way back when, I mean a couple of years ago, it's not like it's that long. I used to write for a website where they gave me the opportunity to podcast. And what I did was that I'm taking a look at some of these episodes that I did before and looking to see if I can kind of introduce them to a new audience. So I am going to do a series where I release some of those episodes just so that I can showcase just some of the past work that I've done.
On today's episode, I have a guest with me. Please welcome my buddy Mike Whildin.
What's up?
Thanks for coming on, man. How's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you, Hilty?
I'm doing great.
Hey,
So,
Whildin, sorry, I cut you off right as I was saying something right as you said my last name there. My name is Mike Whildin. We're both Mikes, so we
this
call
is
each other by our last name frequently, just so you guys know.
this is gonna get confusing in a hurry. So, no
Yes.
worries. No worries about that. So, for this episode of Retrospecticus, we are talking about arguably one of our favorites, if not the favorite show of all time for both of us. It's pretty high up there.
But
The
yeah,
S The Simpsons debuted in December of 1989. Oh,
that
that's
yeah, I
that
that's upsetting.
that hurts. That hurts a little bit. Yeah. But The Simpsons, created by James L. Brooks, Matt Groening, and Groening, I don't know.
I
Sam
think
Simon. They've mentioned it on the show a bunch of times, so we'll just go with that. But created the show. This was a spin-off of the Tracy Ullman show. This kind of just appeared as just like a random clip, just filler for her show, and then it spun off and it became its own thing. And what it became was just a cultural icon and just one of the longest running primetime shows of all time, and just one that is going to be remembered for the ages. And we so I there's no better person to pick up on this topic on than my buddy Wilden, because we met in college. We were in student government together. That's right. We were in student government.
we
Um,
learned some things early.
Yes, yes, we did. Very much so. And we figured out pretty quick that we both love The Simpsons, and there is something about somebody that you can just send a Simpsons clip, a Simpsons meme, a Simpsons anything to, and
A quote out of nowhere.
they'll get it. And that is what Wilden is to me, is that if there's something that comes up on my Twitter feed or something that just even pops in my ridiculous head, I will send it to him and he'll be like, "Huh, yeah, I get that." So no better person to have a conversation about this with. So I tasked Mike with writing down some of his thoughts about why he loves The Simpsons. We're gonna get to that soon enough. But I figured, you know what? Let's kind of just dive into our top episodes. And Wilden, you wanted to say something about how your
Well,
process and how hard this was, because
yeah.
I largely agree with you, but the floor is yours right now
Well,
in terms
this
of your process for this.
Well, this was impossible. Like this is impossible to do, Like you and I always we've had the conversation for years, and there's one episode that we'll get to that we always kind of agreed would be like a top 3 if we ever made the list, but we'd always say if we made the list, and then we'd laugh because we're like, we're never going to do that. That's impossible. And then in the process of doing it, it was just like it was. And we wrote an article about this too together, and I said in that article, I just wrote, I started just like going through the first 10 seasons, the only ones that matter, honestly, and just wrote down anyone that I thought had an impact on the series, was important for the series, was just absolutely hilarious, really hit like some of the serious emotional stuff, and just the very good actual really well written episodes, and the really good character development and everything. And then just some that were personal to me, that were just personal favorites. And I was like, all right, these are the ones that I feel like deserve to be at least mentioned, at least contend for a top 25. I literally like finished with 108. And I'm like, I don't, okay, like this is. So what I did is I kind of started in reverse, and I just chose like some of the very best that I knew would be there, and I just like had one list over here, and then the other list. I know it's an audio thing, but and then I just kind of kept like adding them, and but it got to the point where I just had to make a cut. I had a list of 25, and there were so many that well, this deserves to be here, but I can't, what would I switch it with? And on another day, if I started this exercise from scratch, and I know you're the same way, Hilty, I'd have a completely different list. So I just committed to it. I knew that. And so I just committed to, all right, here's the 25, and I'm just going to keep juggling with the different spots of these 25, which I did all the way up to until I sent, my list to you. But yeah, those were kind of the criteria I focused on. And it was just, yeah, it was an impossible task that somehow we did. And just a disclaimer, if anybody like doesn't hear an episode or doesn't see an episode that they think deserves to be in the list, we agree with you. You're right. Like there are several that were left, off of our lists that, yeah, this should absolutely have been there. And that's the thing, is this show was so good in its prime. It was scary because it was consistently just at the top of its game, to the point where what we are doing as far as our top like was impossible, because you can't actually say that these are actually better than, that there are episodes that don't deserve to be in there. And I guess that's basically,
Yeah, there are a lot of episodes on here that in hindsight I probably would have put on this list, but whether it's the time, just time that we made the list, or just didn't maybe resonate with me as much when I was making the list, and then all of a sudden I thought about it. Like, for example, did you know did you know that IMDb's top rated Simpsons episode is Homer's Enemy, which is the one with Frank?
Grimes. Yeah.
Yeah, nowhere to be found on
Yeah.
either of this list. But I can't speak for you. It was on my short list. It just
Yeah.
didn't make the cut.
It's one of them I kind of just assumed would be there. And one thing I did think about, which was kind of funny, was there were a couple of episodes I felt okay about not including, because I knew you would include them. I'm like, well, I think, like Hilty will have this on there, so I can probably sacrifice this one. And it's funny that was even a thing. And I actually really enjoyed doing this with more than one person, especially with you, because then it just goes to show how difficult this task. Because if this is just like, here's Hilty's list of the top 25, and then any joker will be like, oh, this is completely wrong. But at least with both of us, we can both be like, yeah, this is like impossible. But
Yeah, and
it just goes to show how good goes to show how good this show was.
was is the operative word. We're on four, unfortunately, so it is well past its prime. But I also do want to give a shout out to your buddy who commented on this. We focused pretty much, let's just call it what it is. We focused on the first 10 years. Like,
Yeah,
that is when we were at peak Simpsons.
the golden era.
Yeah. And Wilden, do you want to give your buddy a shout out
Oh,
really
yeah.
quick?
So Rusty, who's just a smart aleck, and just a very, very funny guy, but I sent him our article from Scribe, and his comment, which didn't surprise me at all, was, "There's not enough season 24 in this."
Just
Which he was just being funny, but like
I
I don't even know if I've seen season 24. And like, and that's the other weird thing about that, is this is my favorite show of all time. I know, those first 10 seasons, I know line for line, you and I could probably go back and forth and just do the entire 10 seasons. And there's still more episodes of Simpsons out there that I have not seen than I have, technically.
technically I'm okay with
Yeah,
it though, but
same.
all right. So I agree largely with everything that you said. This was an agonizing task. It was something that it was a labor of love for
Yeah.
sure, because it just brought back a lot of great memories, a lot of great, just great moments to think about. I don't know about you. I laughed a lot when I wrote down a lot of these episodes, because I would just remember something that would just come up. Be like, yeah, okay, this
I
is great exercise.
I didn't have a lot of time but I had a little bit of time to do some research, quote unquote. So I would like what And there are some parts where like I'd watch part of an episode and then just remember the vibe or whatever. I'd have it in the background. It's like I know what this is. I don't need to focus too hard on it. But I did rewatch a lot of these when I was kind of like I'd narrow it down to like which one do I kind of want to put, on the list, and which one like, which one gets cut or whatever. And it was still like impossible in a lot of those situations. But yeah, I really enjoyed this process for that reason. It's like I got to go back and kind of enjoy. I hadn't watched in a while and appreciate the show and think about it on a level that I hadn't really thought about it before. So like making the list was a pain, but once I actually had the list, actually writing about it and then discussing it with you and everything I loved it. So this is a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about it coming up here. This is
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So we're gonna talk about we're gonna start talking about our top 25 episodes, which in it masquerades a little bit as like really like a top 41 ish episodes because we hit on 41
Yeah.
different episodes. And for all those who are looking to watch The Simpsons, it is available on Disney Plus in the U.S. I have no idea where it's streaming around the world. Sorry, but it is available on Disney Plus in the U.S. So without further ado, number 25, I'm already cheating on this because I put Who Shot Mr. Burns parts 1 and 2. This was an honorable mention, but then I thought about it really hard and I was like, I can't not have this on the list simply because I found the resolution to this. Also, spoilers for something for a show that is easily like 20 years ago minimum for when
Yeah.
we're talking about this. So if you're upset that I'm spoiling this, sorry,
Get over it.
I guess.
Yeah. It's
But I found the end of this where Maggie Simpson shoots Mr. Burns to be so utterly ridiculous and hilarious. I'm like, yeah, this tracks. But it was
yeah.
just a solid murder mystery and a solid cliffhanger episode, which you don't get very often from The Simpsons.
Right.
So
You don't
I
that it's the
picked
only
that.
two-parter I can think of. And
Yeah.
and that resolution is like classic Simpsons humor. You and I both had the DVDs, and I don't know how much you ever listened to like the commentary. I always really enjoy doing that. And like early on, you hear a lot of storytelling, like the first couple seasons, and by the time you get to like season like I think like 8 or 9 or whatever, like you listening to the commentary is funny because it's literally just a couple of the voice actors watching the show and laughing along, and then once in a while to tell us it's so much fun because like even they understand like how special this was.
Mm.
But I do remember there are a lot of moments in The Simpsons where they basically promise you some big thing, like some big joke, and then they just don't deliver, and that's basically the humor of it. Like Homer with the grill, where he's just squirting all the lighter fluid for like literally a minute. He's just loading 2 whole things of lighter fluid into this grill and then lights a match, and it just lights fine. It doesn't explode in his face. And you're like, oh, like that's
That's
just
that's
it's
what I'm getting
classic
from
Simpsons,
this.
and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I hear you on that, and I'm glad you put this in there because it's also very pivotal. It's one of those really popular episodes, and it's one that I kind of cut early on because I just kind of was like, I gotta cut something.
Well, your number 25 was one that I cut because I had a feeling, dear Lord, I felt pretty good about if you're gonna include this, like it's got to be somewhere in there. But
Yeah,
this was another pivotal moment for The Simpsons when they introduced their Treehouse of Horror series, which is among
yes,
one of their best episodes. And you picked Treehouse of Horror 5, which is from season 6.
yeah. I picked a lot of season 6. That was always my favorite season, and there were even episodes in season 6 that I wanted to be on this list, but I just cut just due to sheer volume. Where I was like, all right, well, I could just write an episode about season, or I could write an article about season 6 of The Simpsons, but that's not what we're doing. But yeah, I chose the sixth season one, but I kind of actually had the same mindset as this. Like you and I basically had the same idea starting off with the like, all right, we're already cheating. Because I really like, I also mentioned Treehouse of Horror 4, which is from the season before, because ultimately there are a handful of the Treehouse of Horror episodes that like are just top of the so for anybody that doesn't know, the Simpsons have non-canon kind of Halloween episodes every year where the whole thing is 3 different Halloween inspired, and they're usually some spoof of like a popular horror movie or franchise.
Like
and
this,
uh
like The
and these are
Shining.
like Yeah, and at their best, they are classic Simpsons, and it's like I could have thrown 5 episodes of this Halloween special in here and it would have worked, like I could make a genuine argument for it. So I had the same idea where I was like, all right, I'm gonna kind of toss the best of Treehouse of Horror into my top 25 slot, even though that's kind of cheating. Because I mean it's kind of a tough call when you're saying between like, the gosh, what was it? Oh yeah, because that's where they had The Shining.
The
So
the
and
sh-
I was
the
like,
sh-
that one,
the shitting. They didn't want to get
yes,
sued, so they called it the shitting.
yes. And I didn't watch The Shining until for the first like all the way through until like a couple years ago during lockdown and everything. And I couldn't stop laughing the entire time because every time I thought of how well The Simpsons spoofed this. Like one of the most terrifying scenes is when he's like, you know, following her up the stairs with the bat, and I was just laughing my butt off the entire time because I just kept on thinking, "Give me the bat, Marge! Give me the bat! Like I couldn't like the whole time I was just laughing my butt off. And it's really hard to choose between that and when Flanders is the devil and Burns is a vampire. It's just like, so I kind of just made a call but didn't. And we had the same mindset there, which I love because that's totally us.
For sure, for sure. It's a way that we could sneak in couple other episodes that we can mention. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And
so
I want to say this real quick just before we go on. I love our list, because you and I have a lot of the same episodes in some different spots. We have two you mentioned in the exact same spot, which is perfect. At the top, we have a couple that are like basically just in opposite spots, but they're both like top episodes. So I love the ones we agreed on. I also love our differences too,
yeah.
because there were a lot when I was reading through when you said, "Hey, it's live," and I was going through because I didn't know your list until then.
Yeah.
And so I was going through and I was reading it and I saw like, there were a lot of episodes where I went, "Oh, thank God!" Like it's just like because I just was like, I that needed to be on there, and a couple of them I kind of figured you'd put on there, but I didn't. You covered a lot of ground that I knew I had to miss, and so I was pretty happy with that. But yeah,
But
anyway,
right back at you, vice
yeah.
versa. There are some on here. I will get to one that you put on your list that I went back and I was like, oh yeah, I need to have this on my list because of what you wrote. So, but we'll
Oh,
get to
well,
that
thank you.
soon enough. So number 24, you have Lisa Sachs on here from season 9.
Mhm.
A nice flashback episode telling the story of how Lisa got her saxophone. Any other thoughts or anything else you want to
Well,
mention
we'll
with that?
get. I think we'll get into this a little more, and you listed a couple episodes that I really wish I would have put on. I could have put on that I had room for, but for all his buffoonery and everything, and like there are a lot of moments where it's just terrible. But the great thing with the Simpsons is these characters are actually very layered, complex people, and they're not like bad at heart. Like Homer Simpson is dumb and does a lot of terrible things, but he also has a great heart. And at the end of the day, loves his children and loves his wife, and this is just a perfect example of that because like the ending where he's looking down at like little Lisa just smiling up at him like, is this a good way to encourage a gifted child? And he's just like he wants that air conditioner so
So
badly.
so bad.
And you feel that they do such a good job of that, and then he's like, nope, I'm choosing my kid, and he feels good about that scenario. And we'll obviously, there's another episode we're going
The-
to touch on later, but yeah, Homer Simpson loves his kids, and this is one of those episodes that just really brings that out, and it's just it's kind of sweet. It's the other thing too is it tells the I love the B story of Bart in kindergarten and how he became the class clown. That part, as far as humor goes, is almost like even better. Like that one cracks me up.
Well, and isn't this where you kind of learn the origin of where and when he starts saying "eat my shorts," which
Yeah,
it's it's a ridiculous thing
right.
that
Well,
happens because of it, but it's now iconic, backdoor iconic because
mm,
that's arguably what one of the catchphrases Bart Simpson is known for.
oh
Eat my
yeah, for
shorts.
sure. And I also love the animation on the kindergarten versions of all of his friend, like all the bullies, like Nelson, and they're all wearing like the little bunny rabbit like shirts and the chick thing, like the little chicken, and then Millhouse, like his just like his design is very like little. I don't know. I enjoy the animation with it too. But yeah, it's a very sweet episode, and yeah.
I had similar thoughts with my number 24, Bart on the Road. I picked this one simply there's plenty of reasons, but the main reason I picked this is when Homer works at a nuclear power plant and Lisa comes with him to take your child to work day, which man, the Simpsons really know how to do a cold opening because they often do a cold opening where it has nothing to do with the episode and it finds some way to just organically morph into what the episode is actually about, which is something that I've always appreciated about The Simpsons because a lot of other TV shows, especially at the time, the episode always has the cold opening always has something to do with the episode. And
Yeah.
it is now something that is now standard for TV shows, but The Simpsons, in my opinion, is the ones that did it the best. And now other shows that have come out in the last 20 years are just copying it now. So
Well,
like The Office and
that's
Parks and Rec and all that stuff.
but that's the story for The Simpsons all the way. I mean, all the way through. It's there's such an influence on pop culture. Like, I mean, Peter Griffin. Like I know like a lot of people love Family Guy, and I've enjoyed a lot of Family Guy too. But if you watch early Family Guy, seriously, like Peter Griffin is just Homer Simpson through a Seth MacFarlane lens.
Yep.
It's Seth MacFarlane's interpretation of Homer Simpson. That's literally what Peter Griffin is. And so many, it's weird because I do that nerd thing that is unnecessary where I get kind of upset when people are like, oh, but Family Guy is so fun. I was always a Family Guy. I really like Family Guy. It's like, but it's The Simpsons. That's what it,
Mhm.
you know. But yeah, it has that kind of effect on so many things. And it's funny you mentioned like Office and Parks and Rec because Greg Daniels was he creator of The Office? Was he like he
One
was
of maybe. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like they have the Simpsons doll in the office. Like they have that Homer Simpson doll set because of his influence from being on the Simpsons and writing on the Simpsons. So like they literally did pass a lot of those methods through to some of those earlier favorites that you mentioned,
Mhm.
and whether directly because of the Simpsons or because of the popularity of shows like The Office and Parks and Rec, and then pass it. So like we're talking multiple generations of Simpsons influence on entertainment and pop culture.
Yeah, and it's just gonna continue
Yeah,
as well. And but Lisa goes to Homer's work, which anytime that they get a storyline together, and we'll talk about this more because you mentioned that a bunch of times here, where the father son dynamic and the mother daughter dynamic is one thing, but when it's daddy daughter and mother son, it
hmm
just kind of puts it on a different level. But I I love the joke where, Lisa comes in to the nuclear power plant, which she has a problem with. She does
of
not
course.
like the whole concept of nuclear power, understandably so. Nuclear power is nuclear power, but whatever. But Homer says, do you want something? And he offers her a donut, and Lisa goes, I'm good with the donut. Do you have any fruit? And Homer goes, this donut has purple on it. Purple's a fruit. And that's right there. I was like, I'm in. I'm in. And
Yeah.
let alone the whole notion of going to Knoxville, Tennessee versus Disneyland and having a road trip with, it's a road trip episode, and road trip episodes are always
Knoxville,
fun.
Knoxville. I'm
Exactly.
sorry to interrupt you. I just
Oh no, it's all good. But yeah, I picked Bart on the Road for number 24 for a variety of reasons. Number 23, I have Homer Badman.
I was
Back
glad you picked this because this is kind of a brave pick, honestly. Just but like because this is the first one that maybe doesn't age as well. I mean, you have to look at it from the right perspective, but like it's interesting because it in one way doesn't age well because of what Homer does, and it's like, oh yeah, that's probably actually not acceptable today. However, the way the media responds and the way he legitimately regrets it and everything, it's like it speaks perfectly to today
to
So it's like, yeah, go ahead.
this is admittedly how this sounds awful. Don't judge me, or maybe judge me a little. That's fine. This is how I learned about sexual harassment.
Yeah,
And like it was just something that before cancel culture, like first of all, I hate that word cancel culture, but
yeah,
whatever, it is what it is. But before it became, you know, in the lexicon of people right now. Back in the day, this would be one of those on a very special episode of blah 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 for a sitcom, and this is how it felt for this one. It was a little bit more of a serious pick, but it was one that take away a lot of great lessons from it. Like the media portrayal of that, and how things could be edited, and how just the cycle of 24-hour news in this instance, just kind of looking for any which way to paint Homer as a bad person, even though
Right.
it was a complete accident for what happened. But perception is reality, and there are consequences you have to deal with. But I picked this episode also because it has arguably the line that I probably quote the most from a Simpsons episode, where Homer and Marge are talking about what they're going to do about the situation, and Homer's suggestion is, let's live under the sea. And they go into this whole thing about, they do a spoof of Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid, Disney's The Little Mermaid, which is funny because now
Yeah.
they're owned by Disney. And Marge
Oh
goes,
yeah.
that's your solution to everything. Live under the sea. It's not going to happen. And
Which is funny in itself.
Homer's on the couch, just like acting like he's singing, and he just says to Marge, "Not with that attitude." And I got to tell you, I say that all the time. I really
Yeah.
do. And that's probably not the first time that someone has said not with that
Not with
attitude,
that attitude.
but it's the one that resonated with me the most. So just some reasons why I picked this episode. You, on the other hand, you picked Selma's Choice. The floor is yours.
I wanted to give well, yeah, it was real quick on that. And there's another episode we both put in at some point here too that really touches on a sensitive topic. And the Simpsons did that really well too, where they would address these, these issues, and they'd address them really, really well, to the point where, guys that were, young Mikes like ourselves could learn about these things. But anyways, I wanted to give Selma as a character a shout out in this list, because Selma, I think, is one of the most underrated characters in The Simpsons. Any episode that is focused around Selma, and like where she gets to separate from Patty, her twin Patty, because most of the time the Marge's sisters are kind of just twins. They're just basically two of the same person, and they're just very, kind of evil, whatever, and they just are they're literally just two of the same person. But whenever they can separate, and Selma, it's always Selma, and she just kind of gets to be herself. I just realized a few years ago, like those are great episodes, and they have some great moments. So the reason I picked Selma's Choice in this case was because it's Duff Gardens. It's the Duff Gardens episode, and there are so many funny moments just from that. And I had all the whole thing with the beer goggles, and that line cracks me up every time. And just the whole beer themed park and that whole thing. And then like when they're also like just kind of showing, and this is also some hidden character development too, where you're showing, oh, Selma's actually not ready for kids, because the way she deals with, like, when Bart's yelling at Lisa, like, hey, you should drink the water, come on, drink it, and Lisa's like, quit it, quit it, quit it, quit it. And they're just going back and forth. And Lisa and Selma's choice, or the way she yells at them, is, Bart, be quiet. Lisa, drink the water. It's like that's her solution, is to give them both some, and it's like that's not the right way to go about it. So great character development with that, but also very funny. And then of course a little shout out to that like 30-second scene of Homer eating an old sandwich that's like 6 feet long, and a week in it's all moldy, and he just still won't give it up. And that thing is, and so that's what makes him sick, to stay home. But even preceding that thing, I think just the line, like when they wake up, and it's another one thing that just comes out of nowhere, when they're like, we're gonna go to Duff Gardens, and they pull back the cover, and Homer's looking like, oh great, Dad's dead. There's no hint that this is gonna be a thing. Like they don't mention the sandwich at all. And so it's just so funny to me every time when to hear Marge go, have you been eating that sandwich again? And you're like, wait, what? And then they go into the whole thing. I don't know. It's very good random Simpsons humor. But also, yeah, Selma episodes are great. I mean, her Troy McClure one is great. It's just, yeah. And then the one with Homer and Patty and Selma when he borrows money from him is great too. I'm not going to go into those, but it's just, Selma's an underrated character.
They deserve shout outs. They're in a show filled with underrated characters, and dare I say
Yes.
maybe underutilized characters. It's just with the cast this big, it's hard to stand out potentially, and we've got plenty of episodes where other characters do stand out, which is, I guess, the beauty of the show is just the cast is so large. Not even the
Well,
cast, like because
the
the
cast
voice
of characters, yeah.
cast of characters, because the voice acting, like most of the primary voice actors, which credit to all of them for sticking with this as long as they have. They all voice multiple characters, and it's not like they voice, just like throwaway characters. They're voicing. Time is gonna be a thing with this, but whatever. It is
Yeah,
what it
okay.
is.
I was just wondering.
No, it's all good. We're 33 minutes in, so
Really
oh yeah, it's
awesome.
it's all good.
Okay.
So we are, but with the cast of characters this large, and with the
And this with the
talented
quality.
voice actor bench that they have, it's just fantastic. So let's move on to
Let's
number
go to
22.
22.
22, Bart the Mother, one of your later episodes. Very specific reason why you put this. Why'd you put this one on your list?
So we were talking about the Homer and Lisa dynamic, which again we'll mention later, and you mentioned too that the mother son one. I think the only, and I didn't realize this until you and I started doing this exercise basically and writing this, but I kind of realized there's actually one connection that's even more powerful in this series, and that's Bart and Marge, the mother
Mhm.
son dynamic. And because you see the most human moments of Bart, and you realize, like, oh, he's not just like Dennis the Menace. He's like actually like he's a good hearted kid that wants to do the right thing, but he's just, it's almost like peer pressure is affecting his decisions more, to be like cool to his friends more than anything. And I mean, you get some really deep emotional moments with this, with that dynamic. I just remember like seeing this episode very early on, and just like how disappointed you really feel, that disappointment too with Marge. And there's another episode we'll mention a lot later, but yeah, and just a little sweet moment at the end where she helps him escape, and like, they're like, all right, let me take them out in the hall and I'll just kind of discuss how this goes with them, just to kind of try and convince them, hey, we have to hand over the lizards. And then they shut the door and she just says, run for it, and just suddenly that little thing. And then that little moment when like he runs and then he comes back and gives her like a little kiss on the cheek, it's
That
just,
was
it's that sweet. It's
that
like,
was sweet. Yeah.
that's what made that scene and that episode just perfect.
Mhm.
But also some of the humor, especially the Mr. Burns lines, like kill the horrid beasts and then do away with their lizards. Just, just stuff like that.
Right.
And Principal Skinner in this episode is also just classic Skinner. I think, real quick, who's your favorite non-family member?
Ralph Wiggum.
Yeah, I'm not
Like,
surprised to hear you say that. I never understood when I was a kid like why Skinner was like in all these. And I was like, I guess I thought like Skinner was boring, which his character, that is the story of his character. But I think for me it has to be Skinner because he's just so funny. Like there's so many amazing Principal Skinner lines and moments where it's like, wow, like it's
well,
just
he is tasked with something very difficult. He needs to be the straight man in a sea of idiots. Like
yes,
he's got to do that.
but
Where
also
and
to be an idiot
right,
himself.
right. But he's got to be the adult in the room, even though he's definitely not an adult. I mean, the steamed ham line that he has in one episode where he is making hamburger, or goes he's having dinner or lunch or a meal with Superintendent Chalmers, and whatever he's making just doesn't work out. It burns in the oven. So he has to go to Krusty Burger to get some burgers. And just his whole explanation for steamed hams and why they can't go in the kitchen because of Aurora Borealis.
Well, and then just his commitment to it, the whole like Aurora Borealis in this part of the
Yes,
country at this time of
yes,
year, all
yes,
localized in your kitchen. He just goes,
yes,
yes.
yes. And then Superintendent Chalmers goes, "Can I see it?" And he goes, "No." And then that's it.
Perfect.
It just pans away. Um,
Seymour, the house is on fire. No, mother, it's
uh,
just the Northern Lights. Just
yeah,
like, I'm sorry,
it's
we're gonna be here all night.
but it's Principal Skinner is just it's it's a bit of hyperbole to say he's an unsung hero of the show, but he is tasked with something where he has to be an authority figure when he just can't doesn't have the ability to flex that authority figure that much. And
Real quick, and I want to go to your pick on at this number two. But like real quick, I was so tempted to throw Principal and the Pauper on here because it's a controversial one for a lot of
it
Simpsons
it
fans,
gets it gets a lot of flack, and
but
it was on my short list,
yeah,
because
but it's good.
I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah,
I
it's
kind of
no,
do.
it's good. It's a very good episode, and even though like with the whole reveal, it's still like Skinner, the Skinner we know is actually still himself,
Yeah.
and that's the classic was like Principal Skinner, up yours,
No,
children. Like,
I'm glad you mentioned that because I had that ready to go as one of my favorite parts of that episode where he's driving off on a motorcycle and Bart goes, Principal Skinner, and he just shouts at them, "Up yours, children!" And it's like just the commitment there to just
to
you
being
know
an outlaw, but also still being himself and throwing the children in there.
just yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but I so the your pick for this 22 though. I gotta back off of this one for a little bit and let you talk here because this was one of the many that I was like, God, I'm so glad he put this in here.
so. I picked a Millhouse Divided, which season 8. You'll notice for me, like you have a lot of season 6. I have a lot of season 8 on
I
here
remember you saying that a few years ago.
because I wore out the DVDs
Mhm.
for this because I remember this was on the first disc of season 8 for the Simpsons DVD. And as a child of divorce myself, this one hit me hard
Mhm.
as a kid. Let alone the cold opening for this is Marge wants to do a dinner party. And let's set aside the fact that the name of the place that they get all of their kitchen stuff from or the stuff for their dinner party is called Stoner's Pot Palace. And Otto, their bus driver, with one of the best lines, this we'll just say this episode where he says, "Man, that's flagrant false advertising," and he just walks away, all pissed off. It's so great, but
It's
then
that's one of the only times that like because The Simpsons, if you pay attention, a lot of their like signs are jokes in
oh,
themselves, and like you don't catch it. Like the in and out ear piercing, if it dangles, we'll punch a hole in it. Like you have to catch that with the Bart with the earring one, which is another like Homer in the Navy. How did that not make it on here?
yeah,
But that's the only time I think, or one of the only times where a character actually like
points it
acknowledges
out.
the joke. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and
go ahead, please.
but they at the dinner party, things are getting very tense between Kirk and Luann Van Houten, which is Bart's friend Millhouse, which Millhouse, another unsung, underappreciated,
Yes.
literally underappreciated character throughout the course of this entire show. But the parents decide to get a divorce, and then that gets Homer thinking a little bit about the state of his marriage with Marge, which admittedly, like you said, he loves Marge with all of his heart,
Hmm.
but he
He's a
goes through
doofus.
a lot of the things that he's put Marge through. And even is this the episode where like he brings
Or
Lisa
he's yeah
in
in the in the kitchen at night. Yeah.
and is like, I need you to save my marriage. And Lisa's going through all these things, is like, you mean you're talking about your shed in the woods? And he was like,
Well,
you
yeah,
know
yeah. I
what?
said, yeah. She's like, oh, there's still a lot. She tells Homer, and this is true, and like this is throughout the series, and this is one thing I love about their relationship is that do I mention this in an episode later? Do I
Mm,
have any Homer Marge ones?
you might. I'm sure you
Um,
do.
well,
It's
uh,
kind of hard not to,
yeah, but I
but it,
just like there's
even if you don't, we're still gonna talk about it, so it's all
yeah,
good.
well, we'll just go. So Homer, like some of my favorite moments in the show are just they're very small and it's very hard to describe exactly what it is, but just moments where you can just tell that they love each other based on the ways that like the way that Marge is annoyed with Homer isn't a wow, this guy's an idiot. It's just like, it's my husband and that's who he is and I love him even though this is like when they get tied up by Sideshow Bob and like they're struggling and Lisa's like, oh no, dad's been drugged, and Marge just kind of rolls her eyes, goes, no, he hasn't. Like, it's just, it's funny, but it also, to me, I don't know how to describe it, but that to me goes, oh my God, they're in love. Like, they've been married and they love each other, because she's just like, she doesn't even think twice. She's like, no, he hasn't. It's just like, it's just so funny to me.
Yeah.
And this is indirectly another one of those moments when Lisa's talking about what you were just to, and this whole detour was just to try and get you back on track, ironically. But yeah, so like Lisa makes the point to Homer, and this is very true, that like, Marge has put up with a lot of stuff
You're
over
very
the years
lucky. You're
from Homer.
you're
And he's like, well, there's still a lot of things she doesn't know about. And she's like, you mean like your gambling shack in the woods? And he's like, uh-huh. And she just goes,
she
she
knows.
knows.
She knows.
And like, and that's just another moment. It's like, of course she knows. She's just like,
Yeah.
it's because, and she doesn't, she doesn't call him on it because she loves it. And it's like, that's just like, weirdly, that's how marriage works,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it's just like, I don't know, it's so hard to put it into words, but to me that is one of the ways that it just shows how much they actually love each other, in the way that they interact in their marriage. It's not like they go like they don't understand each other or they resent each other or anything. It's just like she goes, okay, I don't know, I can't. Anyways, so yeah, that's
Yeah, like even just the rest of that part of the episode where Lisa's big advice or big thing, because she goes to get like a glass of water or a glass of milk or something like that. Homer says, "I need you to save my marriage." She's like, "Oh," and she sits down.
yeah.
And then her big thing that she says at the end is, "You're very lucky to have mom." And she gets up and walks away. And he just goes, "That's it? That's all you have for me? That's it. Go to your room." It's like, you're asking a first grader to help you with this. And
Yeah,
admittedly, Lisa is the the
smartest family
smartest
member.
character in the family by far.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just like, and this also just has one of just those sweet moments where it shows Homer does care about Marge, where it's not the most thoughtful way to go about this, where he puts on a second wedding, which was very sweet, but
Mhm.
he didn't have to go get officially divorced in order for that to be a thing.
That part always makes me, the glee he says it with, like, well, we're already married, we don't have to get married again. Yes,
No,
we
we're
do, I
not.
went for divorce just this afternoon. Like, he's so excited to say.
Well, and then just also the way that he goes about going to the law or just wherever. It was like, "I'd like to file for divorce." And then the big dramatic music happens, and then the person helping is just like, "Down the hall to the right,
these
blah blah blah."
these things happen, third door on your right, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
I real quick want to, this is another reason I love the earlier Selma's Choice, is the whole thing after the sandwich with Homer and Marge, when they're like, hey, we've got some alone time, let's watch some, like, some erotic movies or whatever, and they're just giggling and whatever. And then at the end of that episode, when Homer's wearing the bed sheet, like the Caesars kind of thing, and like they're kind of like, Homercles cares not for beans, and they're like carrying each other, and that's when they first get home. And the part, and I think Homer's childish glee in some things, it just makes me happy. So when like Selma's asking, how do you do it, referring to raising kids, he goes, when you take an ordinary bed sheet, you fold it around like this. No, that's not what it's like. Those parts are just amazing. Anyways, please go on.
I'm
I
probably
think
gonna
we should save for 21. I think we should save your pick for a little later, because I definitely have it.
Yeah. But go ahead, talk about your number 21, which is this if we're doing bracketology, this would be
This is
last one out for me.
Yeah.
This
This is
Mr. Plow from season 4. Just
it's a one or a two seed for sure, because it's one of those really popular ones that is on everybody's favorite list. It's just one, when you think of your favorites, it just one of those that just pops up in a lot of people's, and it was one of those early. Season 4 is very like surprisingly good, just for like the early season. It has a lot of hits, but this is like the hit of
mhm.
season 4. It's so funny, where Homer gets convinced to buy a snowplow at this auction, because there's a lot of weather going on, and he accidentally crashes his car into the other family car in a snowstorm in their driveway. So in order to be able to get around, he buys a snowplow, and then he starts a business where he he calls himself Mr. Plow, and they go through that whole thing, and that's all just very funny. And of course, the guest spot by Adam West is just great. But I did when I called you 45 minutes ago, But then the whole thing with Barney also stealing the idea, and it's a fun little thing, whatever. Also, Linda Ronstadt's, but like she was fantastic in this.
Sneakily, just the Simpsons, they know how to bring in a guest star, and
Yeah, and they always have.
And whether they bring in a guest star to do one of two things: one, if they're playing themselves, which happens a lot,
Yeah.
or if they're just playing just another random character, which also happens a lot. And you have some guest stars who come in and do both. And quick question for you: best Simpsons guest star? What do you think?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that because
I'm wondering if it's the same person, but we'll see.
I narrow it down to a couple of them. The most surprising one to me was Jeff Goldblum in the Troy McClure Selma episode, because until like a year ago, I didn't even know that was Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, just one quick one for me is one when this is a later, and by later I mean like season 10 or 11, but NSYNC
Yes.
guest on the episode where Bart and his couple of friends, they start a boy band where they, the song written for them is just propaganda for joining the Navy or
Joining
the military.
The Navy, yeah.
Which is hilarious in itself. But Justin Timberlake, who is arguably at the time the most famous member of NSYNC, the only thing that he says is "word." That's it. That's literally it. And it's something that I say pretty often, like in that way, when someone if there's just like weird awkward silence going on and someone just needs to say something to transition to the next topic, I'm always like "word." And
you respond to me that way in texts all the time.
Nobody gets it either, but hey, it is what it is. But
or drink. What do you live with your mama? She lives with me.
There we go. So number 20, we'll get to yours a little bit later because it gets mentioned by both of us, because again, we have a lot of overlap.
For 20, no. No, I see. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
It's not that much further down the list. So, but what I'll say about mine is called the Springfield Connection. Marge has a lot of random jobs throughout the course of the series. Cop is definitely not one that I picked for her, but
yeah, you don't expect it
at all, and it somehow works. But there's just I think there are two things that I love about this episode. One, I did not think that counterfeit jeans would be just such a hot topic for crime in Springfield, but here we are. And just Homer's reaction is like, "Oh no, a counterfeit jean rings operating under the roof of my home." Like it's ridiculous, but it's so funny. But also, this is where you kind of learn just how ridiculous the Springfield police force is, and also subsequently just a lot of police forces are.
Yeah.
This is like, it sounds stupid to say, but that's when I know for me, I'm like, wait a second, like, do I can I always trust the police?
Right.
In certain instances? And the answer is resoundingly like, yeah, for the most part, but there's also a lot of police corruption as well, and it drives Marge out of the force, which is sad because also Homer and Marge have a lot of fights and a lot of spats, but the one where she's arresting him for parking in front of over 3 handicap spots is great, because just Marge just looking around is like, everywhere I look there's crime, horse without a diaper, littering, all that stuff. And then she points out Homer is parked across 3 handicap spots, and Homer's response as soon as Marge put the handcuffs on him was just like, "Oh, Marge, not here. Oh, wait, you're actually arresting me." And she goes, "You have the right to remain silent." And he just goes, "I choose to waive that right," and just starts blabbering like an idiot for absolutely no reason.
So
I laughed so hard
every time.
Saw that.
Yeah. Every this one thing the Simpsons does really well, sneakily, I think, is they do a lot of really good grammar jokes. And they had a couple of them here. I mean, I think that's more of a, I guess a procedural thing, just because they have a lot of really good like hidden Supreme Court. Just like one of the great hidden jokes is that Homer randomly has a lot of knowledge of the history of the U.S. Supreme Court. But yeah, like the choosing to waive that right, and then when he's in the garage too, and Herman's like, not so fast. And he goes, okay. So he just starts walking slower. And like that's the perfect response to that if you're gonna be a jerk grammar person about that. And it's like maybe you should just stop. Well, like they have so many great grammar, and I always knew that, but this whole thing got me to kind of realize like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah. Number. Oh, go ahead.
19.
Yep.
Go with yours first for 19.
So the one thing that I'll say about this is that the whole inspiration for this series of articles that I write called Retrospecticus is from The Simpsons. It is from this episode where the yearbook that Lisa puts together is called Retrospecticus. And as soon as Scribe, shout out to Scribe for reaching out to me about doing something like this, as soon as they kind of pitched the series to me, I wrote about the first TV show about this was The Office. And when they asked me, hey, do you have a title for this? The first thing I thought of was Retrospecticus. And it stuck, I guess. But a lot of people are like, did you mean to write retrospective? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I very purposely did retrospective, but this episode is great for a variety of reasons. This is one where Lisa really gets to shine, even if it's not the most honest way to shine, but kind of just shows the perils of just what it's like just to be a kid in a new area and just try to make friends organically, without, just going up to people and saying hello. And just there's little lines in here that just get me each time. Like one of Lisa's friends, they're talking about the 4th of July, and one of Lisa's friends goes, "Yeah, my family's French, so we celebrate Bastille Day." And just the way he says it with such smugness and such contempt, it's like, "We celebrate Bastille Day." I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get on board with this. And the way it ends with her friends decorating their car in all of these sea creatures, it was very sweet of them to do that. It's just a great lessons like, look, we don't care about the person you were, we care about the person you are. And then Homer goes and ruins it by yelling, "Sweet merciful crap, my car!" And
Even as a kid, that was one of my favorite parts. My version of you when I was in like middle school was a guy named Mitch, and he and I would always just talk about The Simpsons and quote it all the time. And that was one he and I would quote all the time. Sweet merciful crap, my car.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
And the last thing that I have is that my sister one year wrote in my yearbook, "See you in the car," like Millhouse writes in I think Lisa or Bart's, I think it was Lisa's yearbook, which
Yeah.
that just cracks me up each time. So your selection though, this was a tough one to cut, which I'm gonna say that about everything. I don't care the amount
Wait,
of times that I will say that about
but
this.
this is one of those, and I think it's from the same season as this is the same season as Scorpio, right?
Yeah. Oh no, I think
Or
the
maybe
one
that's 8.
Scorpio is 8, which
Yeah, you're right. And
I
that's one I can't believe neither of us had that one. Did either of
I
us have it?
no, because I thought you
Yeah.
were going to have it, and
I really like going into this, I assumed it was on my list, and I feel like I don't know, maybe I forgot it or something, but yeah, it should have been here, as should many of, but this is that type of episode that's just so classic and hilarious. We could have made the top 25 episodes that were all just the funniest, and it would have been perfectly legitimate.
Mhm.
Like I mean, we would have had reasonable lists, but this is one of those episodes that's just so funny throughout that like how do you not love this episode where basically a cult moves into Springfield and brainwashes everybody except Marge, and a little bit at a time, and then has them working in the field and stealing all their money and everything. And it's just an extreme version of what happens with cults.
Mhm.
But it's like it doesn't really go too deeply into teaching you a lesson so much as just it's just so funny.
Yeah.
And this isn't even maybe the most popular part of it, but I never Can I say it? The Marge line?
Oh, I think I was gonna mention this as well. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like the when Homer's like showing her the beans that he thinks looks like the leader, and she's like, Homer, I know I always try and put a good face on everything, but there's no face on that damn bean.
I know.
And
It's
the way that Julie Kavner voices that is
great.
perfect.
So good. So good.
But yeah,
Well,
it's just it's I guess I don't have we can keep moving. It's just so it's just one of those all those categories of episodes that I was telling you about how some are just hysterical. This is one of those.
moving on to your next one, number 18, Homie the Clown, which again, talk about a great cold open where it is new. It's, Krusty the Clown is looking for more revenue streams because, he's forward thinking, he's a businessman and all that stuff. And he's licensed himself to pretty much all the merchandise out there. And the last thing is that he could open up a clown college and train some regional crusties. And he's like, that sounds dumb. And Homer, first billboard of the month, or first day of the month, new billboards, which is hilarious. And he goes
Mm.
through all of the different billboards and he gets to clown college, like clown college.
You can't eat that.
Yeah, that's not going to resonate with me. And just it keeps coming up throughout the course of the cold opening. And then they're finally at dinner, and he finally stands up and is like, I'm going to clown college. And Bart's reaction is like, I didn't see that coming. That
Yeah,
was,
none of us expected him to say that.
but
I
this was a
well,
tough
and
cut for me. But go ahead. You had it on your list. I'll let you.
and I'm sorry. I know I keep on kind of cutting you off here. But this is one of my favorites. Like if I was just being completely biased about this, like I this would be in my top five because it's just I love this episode so much. This is one of them on the DVDs that I wore out all the time, and this is actually when it would play on Fox on reruns. I had taped a couple episodes or whatever, and this is one of them on that tape. And so before the DVDs, I was watching this one all the time.
Right.
Yeah, that whole progression with the billboard, just showing how advertising actually does work. Because Homer is just like, that's stupid. And then like even when he gets back, he's like, I'm not going to enroll in that clown college. That had no effect on me whatsoever. And then he has his little dream about nothing, and then his dream about nothing, and then suddenly the billboard just comes in and throws everything to the side, and then suddenly everybody he sees around him is a clown. Like everybody at work is on fire, and he just sees them dancing with the
The
with the
music,
do 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 do
the
do do
music,
do
the
do,
music
like
just
with
gets
the
me every
perfect
time.
music. And then when they're at dinner and he's making the tent and everything, and they're like, they're not only are they clowns, but they're all holding the billboard in front of them. And then finally, that just little like, Marge, yes, homie, do do
Do,
do do
do,
do
do,
do
do,
do
do, 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 do.
do, like that sequence is just so good.
Mhm.
It's like that's just yeah. I don't know. I can't put into words how amazing that is. But the whole episode has always just been so funny to me because Homer is at his funniest usually when he's at his dumbest, and this is a perfect one for that. The speed holes and everything as the mob's going after him. Krusty owes a gambling debt to the mob, and so the mob goes after Krusty and Homer, who looks. I mean, they're drawn very, very similarly, and they have that joke at the end where they're standing side by side. They're almost the same, basically, except for the hair and some wrinkles on Krusty's face. But like, so the mob sees Homer and they kind of start going after him. And so, two things I want to mention before, because I know we don't have all the time in the world here, but like the part where they kidnap him and they've got him in the back of the car is like, no, 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 I'm not Krusty. My name's Homer Simpson. It's like, you mean the same Homer Simpson that crashed the wall through the car, his car through the wall of our club? And then he's like, actually, I'm Barney Gumble. Oh, the same Barney Gumble that's doing this? Actually, Joe Valachi, the same Joe Valachi that squealed to the Senate Committee about organized crime? Benedict Arnold, the same Benedict Arnold that's decided to surrender West Point to the hated British. Just how weird they get with it. It's just that history and the grammar jokes that they go are just incredible. But the other thing that makes me laugh about this episode so much is, Krusty the Clown is a really funny and very cynical character. This is Krusty at his best. And there are so many moments with him wasting money that are just very funny. But by far, I think about this regularly when people make dumb decisions, and I'll just go like, you took all the money you made franchising your name and bet it against the Harlem Globetrotters. I thought the
The
Generals were
generals were
due. So
due.
like,
Yeah.
so like if I do something stupid and somebody catches me, I'll say that and people just don't get it.
Mhm.
And I understand that, but yeah, I just the idea that he bet against the Harlem Globetrotters shows how bad he is at gambling.
Mhm.
Yet he does it all the time, and it's just
One
yeah.
of one of my other favorite parts of this is that at the very end, where Homer is captured by the mobsters, and he's given the opportunity to showcase that he's really Krusty the Clown. And one of the things that I love is that Krusty actually like comes to, I guess, quote unquote, save him.
Oh
And
yeah, I know.
and then the part where he's Krusty's trying to trip them up a little bit, so he takes him and Homer and he switches them around, like just like from place to place in order to try to like trip them up. And then promptly after that, like all the old Italian mobsters, which again, not the most culturally sensitive Simpsons do that, but hey, it is what it is. But
They made a
um
joke about it too, though. They just like, hey, you brought happiness to this old
an
Italian
Italian
stereotype.
stereotype.
They're like, no, 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 I know it, I am.
Again, just self-awareness is just great
Yes,
for the Simpsons. But you'd think that when Krusty does that, it buys them a little bit of time, because they're just like, I'm seeing double, I don't know who's who. And then Homer, like an idiot, just goes, thanks, Krusty. And he's just like, come on.
good one,
Like,
Krusty.
just
Yeah,
just
I
knows how to ruin the moment.
that's one. Yeah, as a kid, that one I would laugh about all the time. That was always one of my absolute favorite parts too. I'm totally with you on that. And then and that reminds me, because he fails to go through the loop, but then that just kind of reminds me, all the scenes of him in actual clown college are just hysterical, of Homer
Yes.
in the clown college, like with the baggy pants that fit perfectly, and like all the different attempts of him trying to like do the little mini bike on the loop, and hit like laughing at the name Seattle among all the other things. It's just like, just the way he's processing it all is just, God, it's so funny. But
But
I
when they're asking all the people where are they from, and they're like, you can't have a clown like the same clown from the same area, and they just going around from person to person. And when they get to Homer, all he says is Homer, just
yeah.
like not Springfield, just Homer. I'm like, you
I
idiots.
I like the thing right before that too, where it's like Georgia, Texas, and it's a guy that's like dressed just like the guy from Texas in the cowboy hat and everything, and he just thinks for a second, he's like, Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Just laughs.
so great.
Yeah. So let's yeah, we skipped this one for me earlier, so let's talk about your pick on here, because I think
Uh,
this is a really important one.
so this is just a great episode that just shows how much Marge and Homer cares about their kids,
Yeah.
and how just there's this episode is called Home Sweet Home Dum Diddly Doodly, I
Yes.
think, right? Something like that, where the Simpson children are taken away from their parents and put into foster care. And just, I remember as a kid, this episode terrified me a little bit. The
Hmm.
prospect of being separated from my family was terrifying, because the whole scene where DCFS comes in and they're investigating the house, which is in squalor. It just
Hmm.
looks horrendous, and just all the things that Marge is trying to do to help her kids out is coming back to bite her in the butt. And it
Hmm.
sucks how that happens. And when they're actually taken away, you're just like, you get kind of emotional there, because Marge is like actually like really upset, despite the
Yeah.
fact that just moments before, the DCFS workers, they come in and they hold up Maggie, and Maggie's got a sign that says like,
I'm a
I'm a
stupid
stupid
baby,
baby.
which is a prank from Bart from earlier, and it just happened to end up on Maggie somehow.
And the best response, stupid babies need the most attention, or the most, or something like that. But it's just, they know how to pull a punch at the right time, but then pull back a little bit to show like some really emotional moments. And the fact that they're just going next door to the Flanders house, which again, talk about unsung heroes of the show, the Flanders bunch.
Yeah. Oh man.
Just so
Well,
great.
and this episode really shows that like how those two families are just complete opposites. They're
Mhm.
just and it really great. It's not like opposites attract kind of thing. Like it works as neighbors, but it does not work as living in the same house,
No.
because they're just like they are oil and water, and it's very funny seeing this, but it's also they keep going back to that emotional point where like Homer and Marge are in the house and they're alone and they're just like, man, and they're just reminiscing and everything, and then Bart rings the doorbell with like the little fake newspaper thing, and it's on the back it says Simpsons kids miss mom and dad, and it's like, God, it just rips at
Don't
your heartstrings.
no, don't you dare discount the front of that page that said Todd smells.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh, I already knew
don't
that.
don't you dare discount that, because
My bad.
but that is something that the Simpsons do really well. They set something up as a joke, and then they get you on the front end or on the back end with an emotional punch. And
Yeah.
it's something that I
Or they'll hit you with some big emotion and then they'll cushion it just after that with some kind of humor and they kind of bring you back. They have a really good balance that way.
yes, I would
Um,
definitely have to agree with
but yeah,
that.
I love this whole thing, and the only other thing I want to say about it is, well, first, it's a tag team version of what we were saying earlier. Like you said, it's both the parents missing both the kids and just that whole thing. But the old Painty Can Ned line at the very end cracks me up. But I'll never not laugh at the point where Homer is like, all right, if I wanna figure out where Flanders went, I have to think like Flanders. And so Homer starts imagining, and all you hear is Homer's voice in his own head, going like, I'm a big stupid moron with a stupid mustache, and just something like that, basically making fun of Flanders. And then Homer cuts his own mental voice off and in the middle of it and goes, the
The
Springfield
Springfield
River, which
River.
is
He
where they
knows.
are.
He knows immediately where they're at by his just thought process of that.
and
I love that sequence. It's so
and
funny.
and that's something you can only do in a cartoon, and especially something like the Simpsons. So it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, it's God, it's so amazing how good this show is and how well it was written. Anyways,
I have one last thing about this
Mhm.
episode. Maggie Simpson sometimes does not get a lot of times to shine because she's a baby. Like there's
Yeah,
just not enough opportunities for her to shine. But this, as a parent myself, and there's an episode here that we'll get to a
we'll
little
get
bit.
there. That's
We'll
that's one
we'll
of the most important ones to me. Yeah.
we'll get
Well, to
there,
both of us, of course. How dare I say that?
but
But like, it's I was yeah, I was just thinking about and out loud there. But yeah, that's
yeah.
we'll get there.
So, but when Homer gets to the baptism, where he takes the baptism for Bart and Lisa, which is
Which is
hilarious.
such a funny concept. That's such
Oh,
a
you
you
take
took
a
a baptism for me.
it's just such a great play off of taking a bullet for somebody. But then the sequence where Maggie has to decide which route she wants to go. She can either go back to Homer, Lisa, and Bart in this dark and dreary place with a frog that just randomly pops out of nowhere. And then you have the Flanders who's in like this nice sunny area where there's rainbows and everything looks great. But then as soon as she sees Marge, it's over. She goes
Yeah.
straight for Marge. And I guess like I'm thinking about that more and more because my youngest daughter now is starting to like get to the point where she's like asking people to pick her up, and it just warmed my heart during that. And then Maggie takes her pacifier out and burps. And that's how you know it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
she's
she's a
actually a
Simpson.
Simpson.
Because
So
that is one thing they kind of start teasing about, like, hey, like, I don't know if Maggie's gonna remember that mom and dad are her mom and dad, and then of course she does.
yeah, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
that's
That
that's
that's a that was a great way to end that episode on a very loving and tender note.
yeah,
Speaking of ending on a loving and tender note, this was the first of our two episodes that we had at the exact same spot, which
yeah,
I gotta admit, it warmed my heart to see that we had
yes,
this in the exact same spot. And this is a great episode to
mhm.
have. We have Mother Simpson, where we're introduced to Homer's mom, played by Glenn Close, the
See,
the
yeah,
the great Glenn Close.
talk about guest stars. Holy cow!
And it's you start because
Well,
go ahead, you
so
go
like,
first.
I guess like the thing this I talked about like humanizing different scenarios, humanizing these characters and showing that they're actually very layered and everything. First of all, the cold open where Homer fakes his death to get off work on a Saturday and goes through all that trouble to like make the doll and everything, and then they get the power cut. And I think because that's how that all happens, right? And then
Yes.
yeah, like that whole scenario, like that whole sequence is very funny. And then just the whole thing where he goes to where he thinks his mother is buried and finds out that it's Walt Whitman, which is just a very funny,
Just such a
very
random
yeah.
random thing to put out there.
And just the leaves of grass, my just like I just it's so funny and random and just perfect Simpsons. But because he had faked his own death, which again, great writing, he accidentally ends up falling in his own grave, which has been dug, but it hasn't been filled with him yet, of course. And then suddenly that's where his mother comes along, and that's a great way to introduce them. But throughout the series or throughout the season, the episode, good lord, you see it like Homer just is just a kid again, and he's just trying to improve his like to impress his mom. He's like, look, this is where I keep this, and this is where I have this, and this is where I work, and hey, look what I can do, mom. He's like like walking on his hands, which is not something you think Homer can do, while
Mhm.
she's bonding with Lisa, and it's just like you don't realize the impact that that his mom leaving had on him, and that his mom had on him when she was around as a kid. And it's just like, because you usually, Homer and Abe Simpson, his father, do not have a good relationship. And there are a lot of moments that are funny between them, but the truth is they do not have a good relationship, and for good reason, honestly. That just the seeing that other side of Homer where he has a parental relationship that's a good one, that he just loves his mom so much, just brings out another side of Homer that you don't really get to see, in the series, at least in that way. And also I feel like the whole thing with her being like a super hippie and kind of like, the flashbacks to
Flo-
basically explain where she
Flower
was,
child,
which is
yeah.
yeah, and that was a perfect way to go about that. I think I'm gonna let you take it from there. It's such a sweet. The ending is one of the first ones on our list that's like, ooh, this one almost like it hurts because it grips your heart so much. But I'm gonna let you take over.
Yeah, because so this is the episode where Homer's estranged mom comes back, and then and as soon as they start to like form a bond, and they like, she's excited to like come back and be part of their lives. You discover she's a fugitive on the lam, and she all of a sudden she has to leave again, and just the thing that got me the most about this episode is Homer's line that he says, "At least I'm awake this time to say goodbye." It was like, that is, first of all, great delivery of that
Yeah,
line, because earlier in the episode you have Homer who, when they first embrace,
reconnect.
reconnect, and everything like that, he even admits, I always ruin the moment. And then all of a sudden, what? A pelican
Like a pelican lands on his
lands on
head
his
and then
head.
drops fish into his pants.
Yeah, and which is hilarious in itself because it's so random. A pelican. But then you're waiting for that moment to be ruined again, and
Mm,
it's not. And it shows a level of restraint on the writing, and just knowing full well that we're gonna let Homer have this and have this like emotional moment that just resonates. And like you said, the ending of him just like staying in the desert, looking at the stars. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just a great way to end the episode, because we see that she's clearly formed a bond with all the rest of the Simpsons. But again, at the end of the day, she's Homer's mom, so he should get the last moment, and he even takes a little bit of time to just where I need to be alone. And it just, if you need a master class on how do you show that something profound has happened to someone and they need a little bit of alone time, just look no further than that and be like, if you could duplicate that somehow without any words, and just keep it emotional, good luck. Have fun
yeah.
with that. But it was just the perfect way to end that episode.
I do love when she's getting in the van and then she like hits her head and says "dote," and it's like, oh yeah, there's it's
Yeah.
just it's not even that funny. It's just so sweet.
Mhm.
So real quick shout out to my friend Kevin Murphy, another one of my Simpsons friends that is bound over. He went to Eastern too, actually. You know Kevin, right? I
Hey.
think I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, he and I have had this conversation before because there's one you and I are going to mention a little later that I think has to go down as the most emotional, like best ending to an episode. You and I both know which one that is, and he and I would have that discussion, and we'd be like, "Are there any others that can even hold up to that?" And like, the answer is no. But if there was a contender, this is the one he would always bring up. He's like, "That one's big too," and in hindsight, he's right. Like this is up there with some of the most serious, emotional, and frankly best endings to an episode of television, much less The
Yeah.
Simpsons.
Very true. Well, so moving on to number 16. So we have my choice, which is King of the Hill, which is a
Thank
bit
you,
of
by the way.
it's a bit of an odd choice because first of
It's
all, it's the main reason why I love this episode, and this is something that you and I have talked about a bunch of times, because every time I see the word Jim anywhere, I have to say, whoever's in the car, even if it's sometimes just by myself, like, "Gime? What's a gime?" And then he walks in is like, "Oh, a gime." Like, what a ridiculous way to pronounce that, but,
and another grammar joke.
yeah,
Another grammar joke. Because technically it's like, okay, I could see where
I
you'd
could
make that,
yeah,
the like when he starts working out and he's going on the runs and everything, and like the newspapers just like hitting him in the head, and then the next scene it's the whole like stack of
the
like the Sunday
bundle, yeah,
papers hitting him, like just they have so many great moments like that. And yeah, no, I'm glad you picked this one.
yeah, this is probably as close as I'm gonna get to a guilty pleasure episode, and probably upon reworking this, probably wouldn't be this high on the list, but that it just goes to show that Gaim by itself will get me each time, but a great guest spot from Brendan Fraser on that
Mhm.
in the middle right now of a Brendan Fraser renaissance, which thank God for that being a thing right now,
Yeah.
but then also just like just a handful of other little jokes like the Sherpas dancing down the mountain. First of all, great name for a mountain, the Murder Horn.
Murder horn. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Well,
great name
I,
for
I
that.
I didn't have it on my list, but in my intro in the article, I kind of like had a little shout out where like I want to shout this show's greatness from the top of the murder horn because it's
Yeah,
just and that's another one where they just get more extreme, and the Simpsons do those kinds of jokes great, where it's like, oh, we want you to just climb that mountain out there. He looks out the murder horn. He looks out and he sees this really tall mountain, and it has that mount that's music like dun dun dun. And he's like, oh
mhm.
no. He's like, no, actually,
Oh,
it's that one, and it's twice as tall. And he's like,
it's like, oh yeah, it's that one. Slightly to your right, and then
and
he's like,
it's
oh,
yeah,
and it's
it's like
all the
off
way up
the
in the
screen
sky.
tall.
Yeah,
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 it. No, I'm glad you picked that one. And it's just funny.
yeah.
It's very funny.
But then the
You and
one
I both agreed that mine had to be on this list.
yeah, mine was earlier or was lower down on the list, but you had at number 16 the City of New York versus Homer Simpson, which
Oh my god!
this first of all, this episode was not on TV for a long time because it portrayed the World Trade Center or
Right?
world the both the Twin Towers, which I don't know, the first time I saw this post 9/11 in the US, it's like, oh yeah, like those were there and now they're not. And
Yeah.
it's a little sad when you well, it's not a little sad. It's really sad when you think about it, but
Or
but I think what's even more sad about it is that this was kind of kept away from us for a really long time. And when
oh,
when finally started putting it back into syndication, I was overjoyed by it because this episode's fantastic.
yes. I had the same thought too. I was like, man, I can't believe, and that's why like when DVDs were just a godsend because like, oh, I can watch this one again. So the cold open here is amazing too, where just playing on the character of Barney, or it like, and just such a funny concept too. Like Barney is the designated driver. Like basically, like what would happen if is pretty much how they do some of these. And so this one was like they all draw. It's like 98% of traffic accidents last year were caused by you six guys. And they're all just like, oh, yeah, all right. And they're like giving each other high fives, which is funny as it is. But then that means they have to have a designated driver, and it's Barney, the drunk.
Uh,
And like,
but then also you can't forget,
oh,
uh,
yeah.
we'll pick the designated driver the same way they pick the Pope, by drawing a black pickled egg. Like, what?
Whoever has the black one stays sober tonight. Yeah, the which is just weird, you
Mhm.
know. And like the way like when he opens his hand and there's like no, it's so good. And then of course just to build on it, like everybody's having a great time and he can barely take it. And then suddenly the that song from Ferris Bueller's happens and the peanuts are dancing on the. He's like not
No,
tonight. And of
tonight,
course Duff
Duff
Man
Man.
shows up with a lifetime superior whatever supply of Duff for Barney on that night. And he's just like, "Urgh," and he's trying so hard and somehow still makes it through that. But
Mhm.
then as he drops everybody off, pretty much after he drops Homer off, is just like, all right, now I'm going to go and make up for everything that I was just struggling through. And he disappears for like 2 months. And so that's how they get to New York City, is because Homer's car is illegally parked in New York City. So the flashback is amazing. You mentioned that in your article, where just the theme from Sting, playing the piano
The
thing, and
entertainer, yeah.
just so good. But the family enjoying the city is kind of just what it is. But what just the meat of this episode is Homer just just fighting New York City. He just hates it so much, and it keeps on giving him reasons to be mad at it. And I know one of the things I'll let you do your thing in just a sec here, but my favorite part is at the end of this, after he's wrecked his car, getting it out of here, he's taken a jackhammer to it. He even had his mirror shut off and everything, I think,
Hmm.
just because he's just in traffic and just the whole thing, and he's just angrier and angrier, and even like his windshield breaks open at the end when he picks up the family in Central Park, and they've had a lovely day, and they're driving home, and they're driving over the bridge, and the kids are looking out the back window like, wow, this is amazing. Can we come back here next year, Dad? And just the look on his face, and he's just holding in
He's
so
just
much
so
anger,
much, so
and
mad.
then gets hit with some track, like you see him get hit with something gross, and he's like,
We'll
we'll
see.
see, honey. And then it
Mhm.
shows he's right behind a garbage truck, and he gets hit with something even more disgusting, and he's just like, and his face tenses up even more, and he's just like, we'll see. And just the way he holds it in order to not explode on his daughter about this, because New York just destroyed him. That oh god, I love it
So,
so much. Please, I
as
want to hear
some
your thoughts on this too.
as somebody who, I'm kind of not the exact same way, but bit of a hot take, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of New York City. I'm just not. It's just, we were talking about this earlier before we started recording, that, I love Boston. I love
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., and everything like that. New York is just, it's too crowded. It's, just
And we're
not for
Chicago
me.
guys. It's
Yeah.
we kind of have that chip on our shoulder about it.
It's true. But between, just between Duffman going, Duffman fully supports the designated driver program. Now, who wants to drink? All that
Yeah.
stuff. And then when Barney is driving them back to their homes, and they're just humming the Macarena as well. And they're trying to figure out where to go. And, like, let's go, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to the Playboy Mansion. And then doesn't Homer go, like, it's my car, and I think we should go to what did you say, the
The
Lost City of
Lost City of Gold.
Gold? Just like, and then my favorite part of just the cold opening is when when Barney drops Homer off, and Homer just passes out in the doorframe. That's it. He just passes out
Yeah.
there, and then fade to black, and then
And I love what he says right before it. He says, yeah, just bring back the car tomorrow. Just slide it under
slide
the
in the
door.
door, and then go from there. But the whole sequence where he's waiting for somebody to talk to about the tickets on his car, just so many funny moments just from there as well. Like, the fact that I think when he's reaching for something, and he like gets a stick and just like reaches a little bit further just to get like not that far,
Well, and
just all the more closer, is just
they show it
great.
from his point of view, and then they zoom out to show like he's like 50
very
feet
far.
away.
He's very far
It's
away
just
from that. The sequence where he has to go to the bathroom and he goes all the way up one tower for there to be a,
out of service.
out of service, go to the other tower, which by the way, that's ridiculous. Like
Right.
it's a giant tower. Like, why wouldn't there be another bathroom? But that's the beauty of that.
It's the
When
Simpsons. They can get away with it. It's
but
cartoon.
when he goes all the way down one tower, goes up all the way at the other, just the just when he finally gets to pee and just his reaction to that is like, so great. And when he finally sees that the cop is there, gives him another ticket, and the loud "Doe" and it just echoes throughout New York City is great. But my favorite episode or favorite moment from this episode was he's getting hungry and he's
The cockwash guy.
guy comes in, gives him a bunch of food, bunch of the food, and he's like, "Oh, no good." But he eats like 15 of them, and he's like, "What do you have to wash this down?" And the guy goes, "Mountain Dew or crab juice?" And Homer goes, "Oh, oh, oh, I'll take a crab juice." And it's just like so. As somebody who loved Mountain Dew at the time, I was just not expecting that, but it was just so funny with the delivery and everything like that because I did not see that coming. Which
Oh
leads
man.
to Homer needing to go pee because he
Yeah.
drinks so much of the crab juice. But
Yeah, this is and this is just ungodly funny, just unbelievable, and could easily be a top five, as many of these could. But
yeah,
yeah, this had to be on there. The next one, I think you had for my pick, you had later, correct?
I had much
Yeah.
much later actually. So
So yeah, so we'll hold off on that. But you do your number 15. Hilty chose for 15 Homer versus the 18th Amendment, which I think was, if I had ones that I cut, I think it was like the last one that I actually cut off this list. And I was kind of like, and the only reason I did is because I already had 25, and I was like, but then what do I take off the list? It's just it was a casualty of my process basically. If I started this from scratch, I'm sure it would be on it. But
yeah.
I'm really glad you had this on here because this is just so good. Please go ahead
Um,
and talk about it just for a minute.
the Homer versus the 18th Amendment, it's got a great cold open where Bart. It's St. Patrick's Day, and obviously everybody's drinking. And Bart at the St. Patrick's Day party gets drunk, and it becomes like headline news. And just the way that the news report just reports on this is like, is this really what we want to think of the Irish when, just getting drunk and everything like that? It just that's hilarious within itself. But the fact that in order to combat this, they bring up prohibition, which prohibition is it just floors me that's just a possible solution to this problem. But it's discovered that unfortunately
It
Springfield
made for
has
a
had
great theme and a great vibe for this episode, though.
they bring back or they say that yeah, Springfield has actually had a prohibition law on the books for a long time. It's been on the book for over 200 years. And they have a scroll and everything like that that has that info, and then everybody freaks out. And just how with the rise of the speakeasy and how Chief Wiggum has to like help police all of this, and just again corrupt police officers. But then they bring in Rex Banner, which is a great name for a cop or a private investigator to come in and try to clean things up. And it gives a 1920s newspaper style of just trying to guide the episode forward. But the real joy of this episode comes when Homer becomes the beer baron, where he makes just liquor, and he makes beer from the
Well, first,
bathtub.
first he finds it. He finds it in the dump where they got rid of it all, and then he runs out of a supply, and then it's like he starts making it, and
Yeah.
that's the whole thing where Lisa's like yelling at him and says like, I like you're making it now. This is even more illegal than what you were doing earlier, and
Mhm.
and then like Marge compliments him, and everybody's taken aback. Anyways, go ahead.
But then just the creativity that it took for Homer to get the beer to Moe's, which through this intricate, almost ridiculous pipeline from a bowling alley. First, it was creative, like March said, but it's just so funny. And
The line there for me, are you gonna say the same line? I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead and say it because
I was just gonna say the lines like, "Man, Homer, you sure do suck tonight. Suck like
suck
a
like a fox.
fox."
That actually was not the line I was going to say, but I'm glad you said it because that's a great line. But to me, one of my favorite lines from this episode and from this season, I guess, because season 8 is when Marge is asking like, "What are you doing with all of those bowling balls?" And Homer goes, "Oh, Marge, I'm not going to lie to you. So long," and he just walks away. Away, no elaborate lie or anything like that. He just walks away,
Like,
and the end where the punishment of being banished from Springfield by catapult is just so great. And the fact that they tested it on a cat at first is just hilarious. But then Homer is saved by the fact that the guy he's like, wait, I've discovered more writing on the scroll. It seems like the prohibition law that was enacted 200 years ago was repealed 199 years ago. And then Mayor Quimby is another one that I'm surprised.
yeah,
Um, just as a heads up, surprised. An hour and 40 minutes into this podcast, we have not mentioned Mayor Quimby once, and
yeah.
which again just is a
I
testament to
I
just
think we will because you have do you have the sideshow Bob one later?
I'm not sure. I
I
could.
can't remember. So that was another really hard cut for me was sideshow Bob Roberts, where sideshow Bob runs for mayor. Just a real quick, and that one really goes into another classic one that shows you just how corrupt politics are and political advertising. But I guess I kind of assumed that one was on the list just because it should be. But Mayor Quimby is just such a good character. You're right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's actually not on either of our lists, so
Yeah.
good thing that you mentioned that. But so yeah, just it's just such a great episode, and episodes where Homer's like kind of a criminal are just they just get me. They get me each time.
Well, and like Banner, if they play it off like Rex Banner's very good at his job, like they're bringing in the cut. He's actually terrible.
Oh yeah, he's
And
not.
like, and I kind of missed that point when I was a kid, but just there are so many funny moments, and obviously the most obvious one is when he's grabbing people on the side of the road. Are you the beer baron? And they have a couple funny moments with Flanders and comic book guy and everything, but then just when he's like holding down Flanders and staring him in the face, and Homer just walks right by him with the wagon of all the contraband and everything. How's that hanging, Banner? None of your business. Just like it got classic Simpsons. Anyway, yeah, I'm really glad you included that one because that was a hard cut for me. The if I can go, do you have anything else on that one?
No.
Okay, because the next one is the other one that you and I had in the exact same spot, and it's the other big hit of season 4 in my eyes. Like Mr. Plow and this episode, Marge versus the monorail, I think are exemplary, like the champions of season 4 as far as episodes go.
Whether so the reason why I put this on the list is first of all the song.
Of
The
course.
the monorail song is just so great because like I don't know, gun to my head, I'm not sure if this is the only if this is the first episode that had a song because I don't think it is, but it
No,
could be could
it's
but it could it's one of the
sending
more
our love down the well from the season before.
oh
Yeah,
that's
I don't
great.
know if that's the earliest, but yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
But this is like one of the more memorable songs where they're talking about what can Springfield do with just all of this extra money, and they decide to get a monorail instead of fixing up Main Street, which is Marge's idea, and
Mhm.
Marge is known as a wet noodle around the town. So when she suggested it, I'm like, I don't know about that. But then, you know, Phil Hartman, who
Yeah,
Phil Hartman to me, I asked this question earlier, who's the best guest star of The Simpsons? And it almost is a cheat to say Phil Hartman because
because I consider him like an like a semi-regular cast member.
yeah,
It's like, but good lord, did he add so much to this show? You're right, and
um,
obviously this episode too. But
and one where I don't know, like when word first started getting around that Phil Hartman had passed away, the first thing I thought of was The Simpsons. It's like I'm not gonna hear to I'm not going to hear this guy ever again on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
That made me really sad. And just, at a young age, kind of just talking about the gravity of what happens when someone dies. But anyways, this is also the episode where The Simpsons passes the Flintstones as the longest running animated show of all time.
Really?
Because
Did you say that?
yeah, that's why they do the cold open where they do the Simpsons or the Flintstones homage where they do the sequence where they ring the thing and Homer goes yabba dabba doo and he slides down the
Yeah, which is amazing.
just the simple the Homer's like redoing of the words like Homer Simpson, he's the greatest guy in history. From the town of Springfield, he's about to drive into a chestnut tree and just slams into a tree.
Yeah, and then he does.
So
it,
funny.
Yeah, I sang that all the time as even like as a very young kid. I would sing that like to the point where my mom was like, "All right, that's enough."
You have a memorable quote on this, which I'll toss it to you for this because that's a great
Oh yeah.
one of the back and forth.
Oh god, there's just so many funny moments in this whole thing. And God, what was I going to say about this earlier? Yeah, the song is like it's one of the best songs. I think just like musically, I just feel like it's just one of the more pleasant ones anyways. But of course the way it ends with like everybody finishes and then Homer adds in his little mono because he doesn't
Yep.
realize it's done.
Yeah.
And everybody looks back at him. But so when the monorail, which of course has been built very terribly, and is just going to start taking off, like all the gears and the computers and everything in the train just malfunction, so it sends it flying off at just a ridiculous speed and no way to stop it. And Homer, of course, has become the monorail conductor,
which
because why not, right?
How does that happen? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they show how it happens. That part's funny too, where he just kind of like waves his arm generally at the room, and also just like, is anybody here an investigative reporter? I am, and she is. I'd like you to please leave. You want us to take our hidden camera? Would you? Yeah. And then they just go. Like that always cracks me up. Oh yeah, this is another episode. The cold open here is great too, with Mr. Burns trying to hide all of his toxic nuclear byproduct in the tree that has the tentacles and the squirrel with laser eyes and everything.
Right.
But the scene where they fine him $2 million, or no, $3 million, made the Mayor Quimby one there, where Mayor Quimby mistake. But they fine him $3 million, and he's just like, Smithers, my wallet's in my right front pocket, and they just put it there in cash. And even like the judge is just like, oh, whoa. And then he goes, okay. Oh, and I'll take that statue of justice too. It's just so poetic. And again, very, very real.
Very true.
But the line you were mentioning earlier, one of my favorite lines in the series is Homer's stuck on this runaway train, and Marge found a scientist that had worked on a previous monorail from another town that this monorail guy had screwed over. And she gets on the radio and she's like, Homer, there's a man here. I think he can help. And Homer says, Batman? She's like, no, he's a scientist. Batman's a scientist. It's not Batman.
It is
another gleeful Homer moment where he's so excited about being Batman that even under the threat of death, he's just like, ooh, just childish wonder at the idea that it could be Batman in his mind.
It is perhaps the best use of a DC character in a joke, with the exception of there's one episode where Homer is in a situation where he's like on a cherry picker or something like that, and it's in the water, and he's like, I'm normally not a praying man, but if you're out there, save me, Superman. Just you think he's gonna say Jesus, but he slides in Superman there. But it's great.
They actually mentioned DC in this a couple of times, because like the guy is I don't remember the guy's name that sells the monorails, but he's like, he's giving a little presentation to Lisa's class, and of course she does the great like, yeah, I'd love to see why we think we need like a monorail in a small town with a centralized location. Just the perfect reason not to have one. But he's like, any questions? It's like, can it outrun the Flash? You bet. Can Superman outrun the Flash? Yeah, sure. Anyway.
Yeah, but it warmed my heart to see a second episode that we had at the exact same spot. So Marge versus the Monorail, number 14. Number 13, we're going to skip mine because
yes,
we're gonna get to mine much later.
Right.
Much later
I
in this.
I liked that we had these in the same spot though, the different episodes, because they're both heavy.
Yes.
And we are going to get to your to that one later. But
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 yours is
mine is also and I didn't write much about it in the article. I think just because it was like I kind of was saying a lot of the same thing. But oh wait, I'm thinking of something different. But yeah, Bart sells his soul.
Mhm.
So Bart is having a conversation after being in trouble with Millhouse after dishing out hymns to the entire congregation that are in the Garden of Eden.
By Iron Butterfly.
Yeah,
So good.
and like that whole scene is just fantastic, and the fact that nobody gets it, and then like halfway through, like 15 minutes into the song, they skip ahead, of course, but where Reverend Lovejoy is like, wait, this sounds like rock and or roll, and like that, I use that all the time too. Anyways, they get in trouble for this prank, and so Bart kind of challenges Millhouse on the idea of a soul. And so Bart says there's no such thing as a soul. And so Millhouse challenges him. All right, fine. Then sell me
Sell
your
me
soul.
your
And Homer, then
yes.
yeah. And Bart's just like, well, how much you got? And so he just writes on a piece of paper Bart Simpson's soul and gives it to Millhouse for $5. And at first he's like, ha, I got $5 for nothing. But then like as the episode goes on, there are so many parts of him. It's just like there's just something missing. And of course, I love the whole automatic door. It's like that detects a soul. Like like he runs right into it and it doesn't open for him. And then the Flanders kids walk by. Thank you, door. I can't do the voice right now, but like and then and even earlier when they're like doing or around that time when like Jimbo breathes and writes some stupid thing on the in frost. And he's like, let me try, and like he can't get any frost on the thing. Way to breathe, no breath. It's just so good. But it's also very deep because it does attack the idea of what it means to be a soul and just kind of the other, just like what else is there. And it's just to take Bart Simpson of all characters in television to attack this idea is obviously an odd choice, but actually genius. And like,
Great.
of course, the dreams where they're like everybody like row across the boat with their soul and everything. And but it's a very powerful episode to me. And then just kind of an example, which we'll get to later, but just where the ultimate resolution is Lisa has his back.
Mhm.
Lisa's been giving him so much grief about it and making fun of him, but at the end of the day, she buys the piece of paper that has it, and and gives it
That
back to him. And it's like it's just yeah, you
that's the part that gets me in this episode each time. It was just, at
well, and
first
right
you
because leading right up to that, he's praying and there's no music or anything. It's just silent, and Bart's praying and crying, and he's like, I don't even know if you can hear this, but please, please give me my soul back. And like he's hurt, and you feel that, and then it floats down, and it turns out it was Lisa. But
yeah, that's
didn't mean to cut you off.
no, that's all I was gonna say. No notes on that. It was just that good for that one.
Yeah.
So
Your number 12 is one that I purposely didn't include because I knew you would.
oh yeah, I
Yeah.
so as previously stated, Ralph Wiggum is one of my favorite characters, and we've got some Ralph Wiggum centric. There's one in particular that I've got much later in my list, but in this one, it's called Das Bus, which first of all, a play off of Lord of the Flies, which is every high schooler, at least in our state, had to read Lord of the Flies. It's fine, I guess. But
I was a terrible student in high school, so I didn't read it, even if I was supposed to.
you monster. But
No,
um,
I was terrible. I never did my homework, but anyways,
yeah, but like the cold open for this, where they're the kids of Springfield Elementary are getting ready for Model UN, and just Principal Skinner again. This is just another unsung Principal Skinner moment where he's going around to all of these different countries and getting them to showcase their talent or anything like that. Bart's report on Libya is just fantastic, where he's talking about exports of Libya, and he's ruffling the papers, which are all blank and everything like that. And he goes, Libya's exports are plenty in numbers. One of their exports is corn. or as the Indians called it maize. Another Indian was Crazy Horse. In conclusion, it's just like it's just
Yeah.
such a funny sequence where it's like all you've told me in this is that Libya exports corn, and then you veer off into just a completely different subject, which
And it works.
and
He gets away with it.
as a parent of a kindergartner, I can attest that is how a kindergartner talks. Even though at the time, at Bart's in fourth grade, but still, it's
Yeah.
that's how young kids write stuff. So it makes
My
sense.
my favorite line, with the obvious exception of the Ralph Wiggum line in this, that or there are a couple of them. My favorite line is Skinner's right at the end of the Model UN thing, when everybody's arguing about, like, over their different countries, and Skinner finally just goes, "No, no. Do you want to act like the real, do you want to act like the real UN, or do you just want to squabble and waste time?" Just,
Oh, that was
God, I love those jokes.
such a great line. But then, so they're on a bus, and Bart and Nelson, they have their piece of fruit, and they're racing it to the end of the
The front of the
bus,
bus,
the front of the bus, and Ralph Wiggum drops a banana that's not
expecting
going to
it to
roll,
roll.
and he just says, "Go banana!" Just it's just so
Which
funny,
And
and
and that's followed with them, the read, because it kind of comes out of nowhere, because, like, they're Bart and Nelson are cheering for their fruit. Go apple, go orange, and then out of nowhere, as they roll by, that's when Ralph just comes from the top of the
plops it
screen and just
down.
throws down the banana and just confidently, "Go banana!"
And then Millhouse right behind them goes, "Make way for grapefruit," and that
And
causes the bus to crash and get all of them marooned on an island. Which if you're a fan of Lord of the Flies for some reason, you'll get a lot of like the references and things like that. Just their time on the island is really great because there's also no indication that anyone's coming to help them either until the end, which I'll get to the last line of this episode because it is one of the funniest last lines of a Simpson episode ever. But they're trying to come up with how they're going to live and everything like that, and they're coming up with this romanticized, version of how this island is going to run. And
almost like a Swiss Family Robinson type thing.
right, and then
Like,
they're coming up with things like, "Hey, can you make a Nintendo out of branches and coconuts and things like that?" Like
coconut.
Nintendo, like how on earth did you come up with Nintendo but for this? But between the monster being a boar that they catch and they end up eating, and Lisa is all excited about slime and everything like that. And Ralph Wiggum's other great line from this is that he eats a bunch of berries and he goes, "It tastes like burning," saying that in distress. But the my favorite line from this episode is the last line of this episode where they're eating, and after they've had this traumatic experience where they're all like trying to kill each other and everything like that. Yeah, kids trying to kill each other. It's
Yeah,
really funny. But
it was the 90s.
but James Earl Jones with a great guest spot, just one quick line is like, "And so the children were eventually rescued by, oh, let's say, oh." It's just like so like I just wonder if like they asked him like, "Hey, say something for us." And they're just like, he recorded it first take, and then there's like, that's it. It's not going to get any better than that. So
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, his voice is legendary. So, like, he probably one takes it and they were like, "Yep, that's it."
that's it. That's all.
But yeah, this is a very good one. The other one, which
You're
you translated into Espanol, which I didn't realize it was actually officially called that, because whenever I would look it up, it just says The Mysterious Voyage of Homer. The
mhm.
official title of this is actually the Spanish version of that. But so mine in this spot, my number 12, which I bounced around a lot, just up and down the list, was Homer goes to a chili cook off, and there's a whole scene about it, but he ends up eating a pepper that's so hot it makes him hallucinate, and then he runs off and ends up just having this amazing hallucination. Right before this, he promises Marge that he will not drink any beer and he won't embarrass her. And of course he does. And so Marge is very, very angry with him, which kind of leads into the whole Homer and Marge. You were right, I did have one. But the entire second act of this episode, or at least like a good portion of it, is just Homer's hallucination, where he's in this like weird desert world and like he's looking into a lake, and then suddenly the lake turns into this giant snake that just leaves, and he's like walking back and forth and causing the sun to rise and set, and then he realizes it and he's going back and forth and back and forth and having fun with it, and then suddenly the sun turns out to be a big glass ball and it shatters, and he just screams. He's like, "Ugh," to the tortoise that he's nudging along and everything, which is just so funny.
Eventually punts him.
Yeah. But the two big things are the guest spot, and to answer your question earlier, I think at least as far as top 5 guest stars, Johnny Cash as the hallucination coyote was phenomenal. And as a kid, I didn't even realize it was Johnny Cash, but it's like, gosh, it was just and like it's cool that it's Johnny Cash, but also he did a really good job with this. It's just he was perfectly cast as this coyote. But Homer realizes, that he really made Marge mad, and so like the coyote questions him on who's your soulmate, and he's like, "Oh, easy, it's Marge." And then he's like,
Is
"Is
it?
it?" And so he goes through the whole episode, and he like Marge yells at him, and so he thinks maybe it's not Marge, and so he goes looking for a soulmate. And at the end, he realizes it is Marge because he ends up at a lighthouse, and Marge, knowing her husband like she does, just kind of tracks him down. She's like, "Well, I knew that like you were going to be down, like you were going to be over here because Springfield goes downhill, and I knew your love for lights." Like she just names all these things she knows she loves about him, or that she knows about him, and she loves him. And it's funny, but it's very, very sweet, and it just goes to show, yeah, Homer loves his wife with all his heart. But again, and I made this point earlier, and it's hard to, I focus so much on those subtleties that I just know, like I just notice, I should say. But this is it actually putting it into words, where she comes out and she's like, yeah, we just have this profound understanding of each other. We're just, they're soulmates.
Yep.
And they love each other, and it's very, just very sweet. And this episode is also hysterical.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely hysterical. I don't know how you rate chili hotness in alarms, but I maybe it's just maybe 5 alarm is just like the only thing for chili. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I love when he tries Ned's 5 alarm chili, and he like tries like 1, 2. Hey, what's the deal? It's like, yeah, I know, it's 2.5 tops. I'm a fraud. And then like Rod or Todd asks him like, are you going to jail, Daddy?
We'll
see, son. It's like, and then the like, well, Chief, don't quit your day job, whatever that is.
Yep.
Like, I could talk about that episode all night, but I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. The only other thing I'll add, this is just another great cold opening where, it's just a lazy day, and like home, like they're trying to figure out something to do, and Marge is clearly trying to steer him away from the newspaper and everything like that. She's even like vacuuming and smoking, things like that. And then when Homer finally discovers that he's missing the chili cook-off, and just Marge just flat out admits, like, yeah, I'm keeping you away from this. And you're right. Homer's reaction, where he's like waving his hands, he's kind of whimpering. He's like, Marge, I'm missing the chili cook-off. Just great. But it's just capped off with just that great moment at the end where yeah, they kind of are soulmates. It may not be pretty the whole time, but they're still soulmates.
And yeah, and they just in the true form of an actual good, loving marriage, as dysfunctional as that family is, they know each other so well because they love each other so well, and they've paid attention to those things over the years.
Yeah. So moving along to number 11. So number 11, you have Grandpa versus Sexual Inadequacy, which I got to admit, this is the only one on your list that like
surprised you.
It didn't surprise me because it's still a great episode. Didn't crack my top like 106 that I had.
Yeah, the 106 kind of surprises me, but yeah, so really, like, this doesn't make top 106. Like, that's okay.
I don't get me wrong. I do like this episode. I think, I don't know, just like I think for me the reason why it didn't make my first initial round of of episodes is because of where it ends up in season 6. It is like probably to me the weakest one on a list of like amazing episodes. And
Yeah.
it's not fair. It's not a
Well,
fair way to judge it, but
right, and there were episodes from season 6 I cut for the same reason, but this one's very strong for me because
mhm,
I mean it's hilarious. I first of all, I love that they were willing to tackle such an adult concept as sex and like marital troubles with sex and everything. With the first act being Marge and Homer trying to figure that whole thing out, and some of those scenes are really funny. Oh, enchiladas. It's just a very quick, but just very funny. And I really appreciate the fact that they could attack that subject, but they have so many funny things like the Al Gore jokes in this episode or in this season, I should say, like the Al Gore doll in your the one you said earlier with the Knoxville trip. But then this one where like Bart's all crazy about UFOs and conspiracies, and so like he buys a book on UFOs, and Lisa buys the Al Gore book, and she's like, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy." And so they show him scanning a book, and it like sends all these signals and everything, and then it gets to the White House, and they run in, "Mr. Vice President, somebody finally bought a copy of your book," and then it's just like, "Wow, this
oh,
calls for some celebration," and they play celebrate good times, and he goes, "I will." Yeah, but like just it's again the holding and then the revealing something completely different, the promising you this aliens thing, and then it ends up it's just Al Gore's book, like just
mhm,
classic Simpsons. But this a couple of things here. The writing in this episode is excellent, so there are a lot of really funny jokes, like when they're in the truck and they're like just the logical paradox, and they're like the bluegrass getaway music, and
mhm.
then they're like, well, it didn't start chasing us till you put that getaway music on, and so they turn it off and everybody just stops. Like, for to be serious for a moment, and I'm going to come back around to the funny, but the serious part of this is, like I said earlier, Homer and his father do not have a good relationship, and it's basis for a lot of pretty funny jokes, on for better or worse throughout the series. However, they don't address a whole lot of it, at least in a good way. Like they never really end on good terms in any of those episodes. Mother Simpson, Abe is, I mean, he's just a kind of just a piece of work.
In that episode, like one of the like he's all mad at her, and then all of a sudden he just kind of says, "Can we have sex?" It's
Yeah,
like, Abe,
yeah.
Abe.
But in this one, like the fact that he actually has his solution and it helps and everything, and I don't know. I really like that they finally actually address all of their issues, and they don't and they end it in a way that's sweet, and they do the roll in the grass and everything while they're on fire. But like they don't actually resolve anything long term. It's nothing that makes you go, "Oh, they're friends now." It's just kind of one of those things where they're like, we're both screw ups. We get it. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. And they apologize, and that's great, but it doesn't mean that it fixes. But it's the only episode they actually address that relationship, and I think that's just a really big deal. But the real reason I love this episode is this is one of the best episodes for slapstick humor. The
Mhm.
physical humor in this episode between the guy who makes multiple appearances in the series, but just some guy, just some extra that they draw, and they draw the same guy when they're trying to sell the thing, the sex tonic in the mall, and Homer's like, "Sir, you sir, yes, you look like a man who needs help satisfying his wife," and he just punches him in the face. It's just I mean, visually it's very funny. Him saying it that way is very funny. The sound editing for when he punches him is very funny. It's all around funny. And then like later on when they walk into the new house and he pulls down the light and like the ceiling comes down on him and the bike and all these different things hit him, and Homer's over in the corner, just laughing at him, and then suddenly the bathtub lands on him. It's just like it's there's so much good slapstick humor in this episode. And that I mean the part with the kids and the conspiracy, like you could take it or leave it for a lot of that, with the whole vampires reversing and all that, like that's whatever. But it is pretty funny to see all the kids just walking around the street with no parents, and then Nelson coming up and saying, "With no adults around, I run this city." And then they just stand there awkwardly for a couple seconds. He's like, "Carry on," because they just don't know what to do. And it's
Mhm.
like, Yeah, it makes sense for what the story is. Also, the whole scene with where they buy where Millhouse's parents pre-divorce him a tent
Yeah.
so he can sleep out in the yard, and like it shows them kissing in the shadow, and then he's just in the tent just bobbing his head back and forth.
Mhm.
I could spend a lot longer arguing for this one, but that's why this is on the list, because to me it's just one of those really funny. You say it's a weak episode in season 6. That's one of the rare times I'm going to disagree with you and say it's actually one of the stronger ones. Not as strong as some of the other ones, but it's, to me, it's in the, it's up there in a handful of them anyways.
So I didn't say it was a weak one for the season. I said it was a weak one for the disc or
Oh,
season
I see.
6. So
Which
again, not
I would still argue, but I get it. I see what you're saying though.
yeah. So and honestly, hearing you talk about this may be one that I have to revisit because
Yeah.
it's just been a long time. So
And
uh
that's the beauty of this whole experience, like it makes us, and that's the great thing about the Simpsons. I do want to say this about the show overall. The great thing about this show and how good it is even in our, mid to late 30s now, we still go back and watch this show, and it's not like we don't catch anything, but we pick out parts that we always just kind of just breezed by and appreciate it in new ways. Like the humor, it just is generational, and it's just you appreciate different parts of it for different parts of your life.
mhm.
Now that you and I know so much more about politics, at the age we are, and being in student government back when we first met, when Stampy's running through the Republican and the Democratic conventions and they have the banners in the background, as a kid, take it like whatever. But now I'm like, this is
Oh,
perfect.
this is great commentary. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
for sure.
anyways,
For sure. My number 11 is Burns Baby Burns from season 8. Rodney Dangerfield, a great guest star for this, even if, his brand of comedy like doesn't always translate with me,
mhm.
but he's still very funny in this
he,
as
he
Mr.
he was a perfect counterbalance to be Mr. Burns' son.
Yeah, for sure. This is perhaps my one of my favorite cold. Like I say, it's my favorite, but it's like top like 5 maybe cold opens where they go and visit an apple cider mill, and
Marge
Homer.
saying the whole like, I feel bad for everybody that's cooped up inside watching the 7th game of the World Series.
Yeah, they won't get to learn about apples today. And he's so upset about that. And just the tour guide and everything like that is great. And then he runs into Ned Flanders, who shows him his season pass. And if it's a blink if you miss it moment, which again, we've talked about this, how the Simpsons often has great blink if you miss them moments where he shows him the season pass, and it shows that the season pass number is number 1, which means he's the only one who he's either the first one or the only one who has it. But the sequence that's my favorite is when Ned Flanders starts explaining to him what's the difference between apple cider and apple juice. And it goes to Homer's brain is like, oh, this is boring. You can stay, but I'm leaving. And his brain just like floats away. And Homer
Which you
just
think is just a manifestation of him just, mentally going somewhere. But go ahead.
but Homer's just like nods and then he just collapses on the ground. And just the collapse on the ground is one thing, just the audible thud
Yeah.
that it makes is just great. And then
It it's great. It's great animation and sound editing, because like the way he collapses is so just like ragdoll and
mhm.
just perfect. Like wow, he just did collapse. Like he's gone. But yeah, the that combined with the thud is perfect. And you were saying something like a little while ago, and I was just looking down at my phone because I've been going through the list here on the site, and you have that GIF there, like, and so like you were saying
Yeah.
something completely different, and I just couldn't help but just I kept laughing at just watching that.
I went to great lengths to try to find that gift for it because it, is just one of my all-time favorite moments. But
Yeah, same.
just great, just a very touching sequence about, like long lost, relatives reconnecting, even if you later discover it's just no, these two are not good together.
Yeah, there's
You mentioned
there's a reason they separated.
yeah, you mentioned that Homer and Abe have a bad relationship. These two are just Mr. Burns and Larry Burns.
Yeah.
Just no, they're not going to work together.
Now that you say that, I'm even happier that I put Grandpa versus Sexual Inadequacy on this list, and that I put it where I did,
Right.
because now you and I have that's
It
God.
just it
This
just
was so much fun, Hildy.
it just flows together so well. So props to you for that.
And you.
But just you know the I don't know, just I really liked this episode for the cold opening. Just Rodney Dangerfield again, just a great guest spot, and the whole sequence where they're trying to come up with a plan for how Mr. Burns and Larry could connect, and to show that like Mr. Burns actually cares about his son. So what's the plan that they come up with?
Fake
A fake
kidnapping.
kidnapping. Like, just like again, just where it subverts your expectations. Just again, something the Simpsons is great at, because Larry's giving this big speech about how like he's going to stop drinking and he's going to straighten up his act and everything like that, and how after that embarrassing sequence where they he spelled like Larry spelled Yale with a 6, and he just says
I forgot about that.
and he says told me to relax and said semper fudge and all that stuff. Like that whole sequence was great, but he says he's going to straighten up his act and everything like that, and then it just cuts to Mr. Burns opening a letter that says your son has been kidnapped. Like all of that was just for nothing. But then
it's a great Marge wet blanket episode too, because her just kind of ruining things, where like and again, Homer being at his best when he's kind of a criminal. The whole thing where like she's like, no, you have to go back and fix this like once and for all, and say that he's fine, return him now. It's like, now, but Marge, it's broad daylight and there's cops everywhere. She's like, no arguing, just go. And then they have the news helicopter looking down, and Kent Brockman's up there, and then there they are, and they seems like appearing in broad daylight with cops everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, there's only one word for that: idiocy. And Marge is like, whoops. It's just
but then not only that, the sequence also where they're showing on like a newscast Homer like being caught by the cops, and then they show him being shot to a bloody pulp. And every like Bart and Lisa and all them, they're all freaking out, and Kent Brockman goes, a tragic end to Homer Simpson. It's just one of the many sequences that are
one of the possible outcomes, according to our new computer generated system. That it's like, now let's see what it would look like if the police killed him by beating him to death with a bunch of baseball bats or something like that. Like
it's a subtle dig at the media, because they do that all the time where they're projecting scenarios and things like that. But just the last sequence where you think that Mr. Burns and Larry are gonna like embrace, and they're gonna they're gonna be together forever, and Mr. Burns just like, I can't do it, I just can't. And he just wraps it up with, it's nice to know that there's another kidney out there for me. And then that's it. That's it. You never see him again. And it's just like, again, just one of those one-off situations. It's funny, and then that's it.
Yeah, and you're right. Excellent guest spot with Rodney Dangerfield. And that is really true to Mr. Burns' character. If there's anybody that's just going to stay pure evil, it's Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
So we're going to skip my number 10 because, or your number 10, because I have it a little later, don't I?
Yes.
Yeah, I know we both had that one, but
I hate to do this to you, but in the interest of time, things like that, we're going to go. So
a little faster here. This is
a little faster, but also we're gonna 10 through 5. Okay, I want you to pick a couple or 10 through 6. I'm sorry, because we're gonna talk about.
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do here. I can wrap a couple of these up in just like 1 minute here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tell you this. My number 10 is Bart the Daredevil. My earliest one that I picked from season 2.
Because it's actually the earliest one in the entire article.
Oh, well, there we go. But it's a very early classic where Bart tries to jump over the gorge and ends up being Homer, and that's just one that gets referred back to all the time. I won't tell my personal story about the gorge in Portland or anything. We'll skip that. But it's a very early classic that they refer to in later episodes. It's kind of one of those, like, it was the earliest episode and one of the first times I remember watching The Simpsons and being like, "Oh, this is great."
If you do want to read Whildin's personal story, go read the article. Hey,
Yeah, hey, there you go.
that's what we call
Um,
shameless self-promotion. There we go.
yeah, I was really happy you included your number 9. My number 9 was another earlier one, Radio Bart, where Bart pranks everybody and falls. I kind of want to talk about that one.
Yeah.
My number 8, we kind of have to talk about that one. That's Australia. My 7 is Cartridge Family, and I'll just real quick say that's another one of those, just it knocks on two things where, Homer buys a gun after a soccer riot, which is a great cold open, another like classic cold open, but it addresses the gun debate so beautifully and with the satire and everything. It's also hysterical, and it's
Hmm.
just it's the Simpsons at the very top of its game.
Yeah.
And then my number 6, Homer at the Bat, which is a season 3, an earlier one too, where Mr. Burns hires all of the baseball players, the professional baseball players at the time, to be on the plant softball team, and it's just so funny to see, and it was a lot of fun to see all the guest stars, have things to play off with the actual, especially with Mr. Burns being the old timey manager and everything, but also the Strawberry hit a home run. Okay, okay, boss, and he just knocks it onto the highway and all that. The softball song at the end. I could obviously talk about that one for a long time, but it's another really early good one that I did write about a lot. But it's that one's a classic. So yeah, there we go. That's
That
my. I'll
that
talk about Radio Bart, but you do your version of that.
the Homer at the Bat episode was a very tough cut for me because it would have been probably my earliest episode that I had on my list, but also just the sheer amount of guest stars that they had in that, all great baseball players, and just how they all came to be incapacitated during the episode. Just all kinds of different sequences. The only one that was not incapacitated was Daryl Strawberry. That's it.
Who plays Homer's position?
Which is ironic because all the people on that list, Daryl Strawberry was
He's the
the
least, like, he's the one that people would. The only reason people know Daryl Strawberry's name today is because of The Simpsons.
yes.
Yeah,
Not because he was a great baseball player, but he was just, yeah.
he was Daryl Strawberry. Yeah, and I just like, there are a couple lines in there where it's like, oh, Marge is videotaping him, like, oh, Homer, like, kids, tell me when your dad's done scratching himself, and then there's just silence for a while, and she's like, kids, and they're like, we'll tell you, mom. Just, but yeah, the guests, they gave the guest stars such good material to work with, and like, did I make the team? You sure did. Yeah, all right, woohoo. Wait, are you Ken Griffey Jr. to Homer? It's like, it's obviously not him. But yeah, it's just, God, it's so good. But that my favorite line from the whole thing is, and of course the whole sequence of it, all three of them. But the Mattingly, get rid of those sideburns. I throw that one out quite a
Yeah.
bit. Anyways, your turn.
All right, I'll go through rapid succession on some of these because my number 10 is your number 8,
8.
so we'll get to that in a second. My number 9 is A Star is Burns. It's the film festival one where when you think Marge is going to be a wet blanket and like and not suggest like something cool like a film festival, like she ends up doing it, and it's a crossover episode with the critic John Lovitz is just great in this
Yes,
episode. But what really
I
takes
think he's up
this,
there. He's a dark horse for best guest star.
he very
He's
much
not the
is.
best, but he's a dark horse. Go ahead.
There's the three films that are, the ones that are up for the most debate. So the Mr. Burns is a star, a Burns for all seasons, which again showcasing the corruption of Hollywood, which this is something that I never understood until I became more entrenched with like movies and things like
Hmm.
that, how like awards are like bought and all that stuff. Then
Can I say the line?
oh,
The
go for
crusty
it.
line where
Go
they're
for it.
debating it, and it's like, what? Why did you think Burns's movie was so good? Let's just say it moved me to a bigger house. Oh no, I said the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. But then the fact that there's a movie called Football in the Groin, and it's hysterical. A precursor to Jackass, by the
Oh yeah,
way, even though it's not at all what Jackass was inspired from, but still, there's that. But
it was it's what Jackass was though.
Yeah, pretty much. And then a stars a Pocahontas, just a hilarious title to Barney's like surprisingly moving piece about, just being an alcoholic. And too bad it just doesn't get addressed again because,
Mr. Gumble, this is a Girl Scout meeting.
is it, or are you just afraid to talk about your feelings or whatever?
Yeah, or you girls just can't admit you have a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like,
so. So a start. I love this episode. It's so great. My number 8 is Bart After Dark, where Bart is forced to work at the local burlesque house in Springfield. It's like, really, a burlesque house? One of my favorite gifs of all time is where Grandpa Simpson comes into the burlesque house. You can't hear it because it's a gif, but he's whistling. He notices Bart and he just turns around and leaves.
well, he hangs his hat up first, and then he does one more lap, and then he grabs his hat and he leaves. And like,
Well, then he goes back in. Is like, is your name Bart? And he's like, yep. It's like, does your father know you're here? It's his idea. Oh, in that case,
in that case, I'll have a whiskey sour.
yeah. So,
Like
and
I don't mean to keep on like walking on you with these. I just like
oh no, go.
I know these quotes just so well, and I still mess up a couple of them, but I'm just like these.
Oh, it's
Are,
all good. It's all good.
these
I want these to be accurate, so it's all good.
uh,
And then finally, the last thing I'll say about this, another great musical number where we put the spring in Springfield, and just one of my favorite Sideshow Mel. That's right. I pulled a Sideshow Mel thing where one of my favorite lines that he says is, "Oh, shut up! You're wasting valuable smashing time." When the mob goes to destroy the burlesque house, which I found
my favorite of the mob though was Mole Man when he's got like the when
the
they say
flaming
hold on
arrow.
stop, and he's got the arrow that's on fire, and he's just like please
Please hurry.
hurry, and
Oh,
then I don't remember who's up there. I think maybe it's Marge, and she's like hold on, I have a speech too, and then you just see the arrow go by her like in the background.
again, another great callback and just like, hey, look, this joke is gonna pay off
Yeah.
eventually. My number 7 is Cape Fear. Just the literal play off the movie Cape Fear with Sideshow Bob. Like, this is my favorite Sideshow Bob episode of all time. And this to me is also one of the earliest sequences where I fell in love with the Simpsons,
Hmm.
where Sideshow Bob like straps himself to the bottom of the Simpsons car, follows them to where they're at, and there's all these rakes for some strange reason just all around, and he just steps on a bunch of them, and he steps on it, the sound that it makes of it thudding his face, and he just goes and he just does that over and over again. That gets me every single time.
That's
And
the same episode where they're tied up on the boat, and it's like oh no, Dad's been drugged that I mentioned earlier.
yes.
Same episode.
Yeah. And finally, my number 6, very fitting because it's Valentine's Day is coming up, but it is I Love Lisa, where, first of all, the greatest Valentine's Day card of all time. I choose you, which I've said that to multiple people on Valentine's Day, and not a single person understands that, which is
False. One person understands because you always say it to me.
I do on Valentine's Day. But I guess the other part that I love, even though it's kind of disturbing, the part in the episode where Bart is pausing in on the very moment where Ralph Wiggum's heart gets torn in half. That always just gets to me because
Yeah.
first of all, how 1995 of this where we're pausing a VHS tape or like a
Right.
sequence or things like that. Now that would just be something. It's like, hey, we'll just pull this up on YouTube or some crap like that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I so real quick, right before that is actually my favorite line, and it's one of my favorite Krusty lines where it's like, and now it's time for my favorite part of the show. What does that say? Talk to the audience.
oh,
Oh
this is gonna be
God, this
death.
is always death.
So those are my 10 through 10
Six.
through 6. So go
With the
ahead.
exception of your 10 and my 8. And then I also want to talk a little bit about Radio Bart. So
Well, why
real
don't you go
quick
ahead?
before we
Go ahead and talk about Radio Bart because
I
this is a
just
great one.
I and I kind of like I went back and watched this one, and this is one that made the list after my initial thing. I kind of was going through and just making sure, and I was like, wait, this one was kind of funny, right? And when I rewatched it, I went, oh my god, this one is amazing. Like I forgot just how good this episode was, and it just has so much. So real quick, Bart gets a birthday present from Homer that he just doesn't like. It's a walkie-talkie, but he starts playing pranks on people with it, and so he starts having fun with it, and then he plays a prank in the whole town by throwing the walkie-talkie down a well and then saying like, "Oh, help, I'm stuck down a well." So everybody thinks that a kid's stuck down there. And then Lisa reminds him that he put his name on the radio, so on the walkie-talkie, so he tries to go down there and get it and gets stuck in the well himself. And then when they all discover that he's down there and that he was just pranking everybody, everybody just stops feeling, empathetic and everything, and so everybody just leaves him down there basically. And so first of all, for you talked about your Valentine's thing, I choose you. My one of I have a couple of birthday go tos that I go to. Another one is a Simpsons thing too, with the Ramones singing "Happy Birthday" to Mr. Burns. But my go to birthday video that I will just send people is one of my favorite scenes of all time, because they're in this, like, it's supposed to basically making fun of Chuck E. Cheese and the robot band when Bart walks up and it's like, "I hear it's your birthday. How old are you?" "Well, that's great." And they just, I won't do the whole thing, but then the song saying, you're the birthday boy or girl. It just, and then like the thing breaks down and the Wally Weasel, it's just like, it's so good. And so I love sending that to people, whether they know Simpsons or not. And it's good. But it's kind of got some sweet moments too, and this is another one with Sting singing "We're Sending Our Love Down the Well," and then Krusty doing the other part of it, the song, and it's just like, God, that's so good. I remember you telling me that, like reminding me of that song several years ago, and I went, wait, that's funny. Like this is like 10 years ago. I talk. I was like, wait, but just, I don't know. There are just so many funny sequences. There are funny Homer lines in this, and I won't go over all of them, but the part where, like, first of all, Homer says, "That's it. I'm doing this myself," and they have kind of inspiring, like, antsy music, and he just starts digging, and it's like he's going to, his son is stuck in a well, and he's going to dig him out himself, which isn't as big of a deal, and of course everybody joins in the town, but to me, I don't know, that always hit me as just kind of a big moment, which in the one before, in the Bart the Daredevil, is also another moment where Homer loves his son and he goes and he stops Bart from making the jump and then accidentally makes the jump himself. But it ends in two very funny moments for me. The very first scene, there's an ongoing visual joke that groundskeeper Willie is just jacked and just has so many muscles, and like under his little, like if he just rips off his shirt, he just has all these muscles. This is the first time I think that they ever make that joke, and he comes out like, "Agnes, we've got work to do with this shovel," and then he just does like that, like whole like Superman thing, and for no reason at all these muscles just pop out as he rips his shirt off, and the as he does it, just so funny. But just the hilarity of, they have Sting is just batting her away at this rock that's, they're very close to him, to finding Bart. And just Marge like, "Sting, you look tired, maybe you should take a rest." "Not while one of my fans needs me." "Well, actually, I haven't heard Bart." "Marge, quiet." That whole thing is just so funny and so random, like, how are we in the, like, Sting is in the ground in a well trying to like dig a kid out, and it's just like, of course it would be Sting, it's just, God, it's so funny and random. But yeah, I this is one of those early ones that stands the test of time, and just, the birthday thing is just my favorite thing. Anyways, so yeah, that's Radio Bart. But the one that you and I skipped out of both of our top, our 10 through 6, we really need to talk to about as well, if you think we can here.
Oh yeah, we're good. Bart versus Australia from season 6. Like, first of all, like, this resonates with me now. Like, it did before, but it resonates with me now because my wife's from New Zealand. So
Yes.
any chance that she gets to rip on Australia, she's gonna take it. So, but just the how 90s is this episode, because it's got a phone book and a collect call to a foreign government, which I'm pretty sure that would not be a thing.
Right.
Like that just would not happen that way. But it's hilarious because Bart decides to do a prank phone call on somebody in the southern hemisphere because, again, cold opening where like Lisa and Bart are, talking about which way the water goes in the sink and then the toilet, And Lisa explains to Bart about
The
that.
Coriolis effect.
That's where I first learned
Same.
about that. But then Lisa explains like the difference between the northern and the southern hemisphere, and like to me, like one of my favorite sequences from this part in the cold opening is when she's going around, or Bart's going around the globe. Like first of all, it's still wrapped as well, so
Hey,
he has to.
also, real quick, the lines like the Southern Hemisphere. What the
What the
hell is
hell
the
is the
Southern
southern
Hemisphere?
hemisphere? Just says that with such contempt.
Yes.
But he's pointing out all these different countries in the southern hemisphere, and then he finally stops with and Rand McNally. It's like that's the brand of the globe. What are you talking about? But he just says that so matter of fact, and again, just like another play on just that's clever writing right
Yeah.
there, because like Bart clearly doesn't know anything about this globe, but points that out. Also, subtle plug for Rand McNally, I guess as well.
Yeah.
But
Well,
um,
hey, I got my degree was in geography, so I'll take it.
there we go, there we go.
I
But
yeah, go ahead.
the I don't know, just this episode is jam packed with all these like subtle Australian moments and Australian things, and like even just when they come up with like the solution to bring Bart and the family to Australia, they're going through all of these like different slides of like how the US had like this brief obsession with Australia in like the 1980s or whatever, and I don't know, just like all of that stuff was just fantastic to
Yeah.
me.
Well, out of all of the Australian things, my favorite dig at them was the after Bart hangs up on the like when the Australian dad calls him back looking for Dr. Bart Simpson, and then Bart just screws with him on the phone, and he gets all pissed off, and Bart hangs up on him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to report this to me member of Parliament," and he just walks over to the window and goes, "Hey Gus, I've got something to report to you."
Mm.
And then it flips to them talking. "I'm going to take this all the way to the prime minister." They just run over the hill. "Hey, Mr. Prime Minister." It's just like that. I just love that joke so much. But they have so many great digs at just Australian culture here, and I love all the like Australian accents that they do. Like whether they're good or not, I don't know, but they're funny. And that throwing stick trick of yours is boomeranged on us, so that's another one. But the frog being introduced into the ecosystem was another really funny like science joke. But Homer and the guard at the embassy is maybe my favorite thing. Just at first when he's when he's standing there, he's like, "Are you like one of those guards that stands there and can't do anything?" And he's like, and then the guard punches him in the face. Like,
No, sir, we don't tolerate that kind of crap,
like,
sir.
nope. It's like there's your answer. And then of course the Australia America thing too. But like I like the first one more just because it's a very funny answer to his question, and he's just like it's the same as when like it comes from one of my later picks, but when he's talking about like Homer's like the trip to the Amish country, he's like, "I could be a jerk and no one can stop me," and then the mule just kicks him. It's a similar thing with that. But yeah, I God, that cracks me up. And this is one of those episodes. The last thing I'll say is this is another one of those where when I talk about this among all of my friends that are Simpsons fans, whether it's you or Kevin or my buddy Keith or anybody, everybody always brings up the Australia one because it's just that good and it's that
Mhm.
funny and it's a classic. It's one of those. It's like it can't not be on this list.
Yeah.
There were a lot of them that we made impossible choices with that like this has to be on there, but we can't. And we made those tough cuts. But then there are a few. There's a hand. We're getting to the episodes now that like no, this has to be here. Like
Hmm.
it has to be. And this is
Yeah.
one of those. And it's up on that list of people's favorites. The Beer Baron one is another one that I'm glad you put because that's another one, that people mention. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's so funny. And it's on the same disc on the DVDs as I think as Homer the Clown.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a solid disc.
So the last two things I'll say is like one, I do love episodes where the Simpsons travel, and particularly
Yes.
the ones where they travel abroad too. Like I think the only other one that probably could have sniffed the top 25 is the one where they go to Japan as
Yes.
well. Um,
Last episode of season 10, I did not realize it was that late until several years ago. And I was like, really?
yeah. Yeah. So
That's how go ahead.
that's great. But I don't know. To me, nothing will ever top Bart Simpson. Like, first of all, the fact that a booting, like a kick in the butt, is the punishment. Like, what are we doing here? But then the other thing is that when they finally settle on, okay, one boot from the prime minister with a regular shoe, not this giant boot or anything like that. But then Bart looks at the toilet, which has been fashioned to with a machine that spins in the normal or in the American way, and Homer like gets emotional looking at it because it reminds him of home. Like, really? Okay, cool. But the fact
As they,
that
they start playing America the Beautiful.
I know, but then Bart, preparing to take his punishment, has the kick miss him, and he says, "This is for the United States of America." Moons them, and starts singing the national anthem.
Yes.
It,
And he's got "Don't Tread on Me" like written on his butt, and then later that's like, wow, yeah, I wish you would have chosen a more, like whatever Marge says, and then
a
Lisa
more
just,
a more diplomatic way to be patriotic or something like that, and
yeah,
then
yeah, and then Lisa just says what everybody kind of thinks in the back of their head, like, I'm impressed you're able to write so legibly on your own butt.
which I don't know, like it's it's funny because at the time, "Don't Tread on Me," that was just an hilarious thing to put, and it's just too
Yeah.
bad that "Don't Tread on Me" has been ruined. Anyways,
Yeah, but it's the whole scene that you're describing though is just amazing, and like I guess I could care less what he wrote, but just the fact that Lisa makes that comment is
mhm,
just like they acknowledge. It's kind of like when Krusty and Homer do the switching thing you were talking about earlier. It's
yeah.
like they're making fun of their own animation because Krusty the Clown is just Homer with some wrinkles and a little tuft of hair at the top, and in a clown suit.
Yeah.
But and then I was so on the travel thing. I want to tell a personal thing real quick, just because it's real quick, and because my buddy Kevin mentioned this. I travel for a living for work, and I take contracts for 3 months at a time in the healthcare field. And this past summer, kind of unexpectedly, I ended up going to Grand Forks, North Dakota, which is very random. And I never expected to go up there in a million years. And when I told my buddy Kevin about this, he laughed. He's like, it sounds like a Simpsons episode where they're traveling. And then he just went, the Simpsons are going to North Dakota. And I just went, oh my God, he's right. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
it's true.
All
It's
right, my friend.
good.
I
Good.
think, are we good on those?
We're good on those. So, okay, we're on to our top five with this, and we've got a bunch of episodes that overlap. I
Yes.
am I am wondering, should we try to knock out these episodes that are on one of our lists, and then save the meat of our discussion for the ones that overlap?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's I think that's the best way. And I was just going to say, I think you should hit your number 5 here.
So my number five and my number four, I believe, are ones that I had on my list, but you didn't have on your list. So I'll hit up those. So my number five is Lisa's rival from season six, where Lisa, she's known as somebody who is just somebody who is the smartest one. She's always going to be the best. This is, yeah,
Yeah.
this is one where oddly the cold opening is directly related to everything that's going on. So, Lisa is, the one that everybody's asking for help for in class, and like she's like going to be the head saxophone or like first chair for the saxophone in the school band and everything like that. But then another student comes in and starts to steal her thunder a little bit. Allison, played by Winona Ryder
Right.
of all people. So there's two things about this episode that I really really love. So another Ralph Wiggum gem in this when he's the one that wins the diorama competition with Star Wars action figures, and just how when they're judging these, and they Allison and Lisa's dioramas just don't win because they're just not as good as
Well,
they
this
hope.
doesn't deserve to win.
Yeah,
What?
but when the way that it was ultimately decided, where Mr. Burns asked Miss Hoover's like, "What do you think?"
You mean
and she
Skinner?
goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, No, Mr. Skinner says to Miss Hoover, "What do you think?" And she goes, "I think it's time for lunch." And they just award the win. But he gets all excited. He's like, "I beat the smart people. I beat the smart people." He trips, and then he says, "I bent my Wookie," just like all sad and stuff, and like it just cracks me up. But the part of this episode that cracks me up the most, when Allison takes Lisa over to her house and meets her dad or meets Allison's dad, and they play this game of anagrams where they take a celebrity and they rearrange the letters to form a description of the character. And it took me a while to really get this joke. Like it did, because I just thought that Lisa was just dumb. Like,
Yeah, and it's another really good grammar joke too.
yeah, but with a so Allison's dad gives Allison Alec Guinness, and she rearranges the letters just really quick and just goes genuine class. I'm like, oh, very good, very good. Lisa, I'll give you an easy one. Jeremy Irons. And Lisa just trying to like think of something. All she just says is Jeremy's iron. Just says it just like this is the best that I could come up with. And Allison's dad goes, you know what? I have a ball. Why don't you go play with it? And
Perhaps you'd like to bounce it.
oh,
I I'm surprised that
condescending.
you said that one the way you did, because you say that one to me all the time. I have a ball. Perhaps you'd like to bounce it. You and I go back and forth on. That's why I didn't include this episode, because I knew you would, and I just like that
Yeah,
line just stick, and like that line's hilarious. But I always think of you whenever I see that part, because
I
we've laughed about that one for a
uh,
long time.
I love that one. And my number four is Much Ado About Nothing from season 7. So this is where I learned about the immigration debate. Another hot button topic that the Simpsons were just not afraid to dive headfirst in. This to me, again, this is like the fifth time I've said this, but my one of my favorite cold openings of all time with this random bear that comes into Springfield and they
And it's such a gentle, friendly bear. It's not doing anything, you know.
it's not doing anything besides ruining the Impson family's mailbox. That's it. But this bear that just comes in from the mountains and just the chance that the Homer leads this group of protesters to protest at City Hall about needing round the clock bear protection, and the
Like a
sequence
freaking bear jamboree around here.
the sequence where the Bear Patrol is going around Springfield, and Homer gets so upset about how all of his taxes are going to the Bear Patrol, and Lisa just is explaining to him all of this thing about like how taxes work, and like this is actually like the smallest tax hike in history, but the way that she says like, but you know, that'd be as innocuous as saying that this rock were the cause of like
Well,
there's
no, it's so what's happening is before the Bear Patrol tax thing is what happens. He's standing out there observing all of it, and he says the Bear Patrol seems to be working perfectly, and he reasons with it, saying reason he's argues for that by saying that he doesn't see any bears, even though they've only ever seen the one bear. And then that's when Lisa's like telling him like, well, that's innocuous thinking. And I'm sorry, I'll let you
yeah,
keep going with that.
but you know she says like I have a rock, like you know I could make the argument that this is keeping all the bears away. I don't see any bears, and Homer finally goes, Lisa, I'd like to buy your rock. And Lisa like has to think about it for a second, and then finally just takes his money and just goes. But then they march down to City Hall, and they they're upset about taxes, and like this is where like the politics of this like become a thing, because they're just like they don't want any bears, but they don't want to pay taxes. And then Mayor Quimby goes, this this problem calls for real leadership and real, but he doesn't say leadership. He's like real, like blame or like just
Yeah,
dodge.
I can't remember what he
I
says
can't.
either.
But then he just comes out and says like, people, your taxes are high because of illegal immigrants. Like, wait, what? And then everybody just believes it, because that is just that is just how
That's
people
how it works.
that's just
That's
how people work.
how Politics work. That is absolutely how politicians deflect, scandals and how they get what they want.
It's much easier to blame something else. And it's just, again, this is another episode that it took me a while to really understand just the implications of this. But, Apu, who is here in the United States illegally, voiced at the time by Hank Azaria, which I miss him as a poo. I thought he did a great job. We talked about this beforehand. Like, not exactly sure the show handled it the best way, or like the creative forces find this
Right.
handle this the right way.
But the thing is, when it's the early 90s, you have a cartoon, and I don't know what their budget was, but I know that at the beginning they were fighting for, to stay relevant. They didn't
Yeah,
have the money that they have today, and so they were working on it with a bare bones crew. And so, there are a couple of characters that like Marsha Wallace is great as Krabappel, but with like they had so I guess I'm kind of, I'm maybe shouldn't, I don't know. All I'm saying is like they, Hank Azaria, Harry Shearer, and Dan Castellaneta voice almost all of Springfield, outside of the main family members. And when you have a voice actor that has such range, and then you come up with a character that can do a bunch of different voices and a bunch of different accents, it doesn't like financially make sense to like, well, and obviously at the time, people weren't thinking of it. Like it does speak to people not being as conscious of it, and that part is unfortunate. But I still argue that like financially it wouldn't have made sense, like, well, we have a character that's Indian, we have to have this guy, it's like, hey, can you do this voice? Okay, cool, because he can do all these voices. It just financially made more sense. And I think if they had started writing this today and that was the case, then yeah, dude, like, maybe because, but it's like the landscape is different, and that doesn't, again, it doesn't make it okay like in that way. But they made a financial decision, and they do so many voices.
Mm.
Groundskeeper Willie, Bumblebee Man. I think, I'd already like, Apu is not the most offensive character in that town.
he's not, but like, and Hank Azaria, at least stepped away like gracefully and was like,
Right.
"Hey, I recognize that this is potentially hurtful for people, so I'll step aside and
Yeah.
I will
Like,
give a chance to somebody who is Indian, who would, you know, portray this maybe a little bit better."
right. But I don't think it, like, especially with a bare bones crew where they're like, you can do all these voices, let's do this. And then to say, like, I don't know, it's just like there are some things that you can't just like let go, like, oh, just because it was a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like, that argument isn't really for like certain actions, but I don't feel like this is one of them that you can just go back and say, this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, I gotcha. I gotcha on that.
Maybe,
Um,
maybe I'm making the wrong argument here. I don't know.
No, I don't think you're making the wrong argument at all. You're all good. So, okay, so there's those two I have for my 5 and 4. I'm very happy that you put your number 5 where you did, because can I admit something to you?
Yes.
This was an honest mistake. I came up with my top 25 and I was like, I'm happy, I'm done, I'm good. And then all of a sudden I read yours and you put your number 5, and I just, let's just say there was a lot of cursing afterwards, that because your number 5 is fantastic.
Yeah, it's and it's one of the best. I there were So I kept on shuffling. Like I said, I had my list of 25, but I shuffled those 25 constantly. And there was a short while where I had this as my number one, because as I was rewatching these, and it's another season 6 one. It's Itchy and Scratchy Land, where they go to a theme park on an island, that's all based on the violent cartoon Cat and Mouse, Itchy and Scratchy, which of course is, a very violent play on Tom and Jerry. But like, I went back and rewatched this, and God, it's so good. It's so good, and in a very packed season, like you said, season 6 and all those really good ones. I'm like, wow, this one, like, I always really liked this one, but I went back, I'm like, this might be the greatest, like, this might be my number one, and I ended up not doing it, but like, and for different reasons. Like, I had some ahead of this for different reasons, but like, I'll before we say anything about the episode and the different like parts of it and everything and breaking it down. To me, this it stuck out to me because this is like the best episode and one of the only ones I can think of aside from maybe like the really early seasons where there's no like A and B story, like we've talked about episodes that focus on Homer and Lisa and Martin, Bart and Marge, or Homer, like they have a pair, or sometimes the solo act, like with Homer versus New York City, and he's, it's kind of like Homer and it's focused on him, or it's focused, there's always like a focus on one character or two characters. And this is the only one I can think of that there's no A or B story. It is just the family teaming, just a comedy team. And the entire time, there's a point where like the adults and kids split up for a little bit, but it's not really set up in a way where they're separating the story. It's still all the same story. And the entire time, it is the main character of this episode is the Simpson family all
Mhm.
together. And they do it so well. You can't even say this is technically a Marge episode or technically there's just no main character and it's so good, but it really stuck out to me for that reason and it was very unique. And with all of that, there is so much of just the absolute best comedy writing in this episode from beginning to end. It's constantly just so funny. I mean, it starts off with a bang with the Itchy and Scratchy episode they watch is pretty funny, and then they announce the Itchy and Scratchy Land thing, and then them like Marge's wet blanket is like we're gonna go to the bird
A
sanctuary,
bird,
and the just
the look on
y-
his face, like what,
it
what, what?
right, it's
You send
drawn
this
so
to
well and everything, and then they're like Bart's dead. What? Yeah, that's right, dead tired
that's
of it's just like and then like they're driving there and Homer, I've got an ace up my sleeve, and then starts honking the Flickies sign, geography joke that like
mhm.
it took me a while to get to, where they see a billboard that says next Flickies 284 miles, next Flickies 162 miles, and like they show several of these, and the kids are looking out the window because it's such a long drive. And another classic Simpsons giving you the joke and then or like setting up the joke and then just not paying it off for you, and they're coming up and they're coming up and then finally says next Flicky's like 20 miles, and then Bart's just like, Dad, can we stop at Flicky's? He just goes no, and they drive by it, and then it just has a sign that says next Flicky's 25,000 miles, which I believe is the distance around the earth or something like that. And so I'm like, excellent geography joke thrown at the end, but they just prep you so much for Flickies is going to be such a big deal, and then can we stop there? Nope, and then it's just done. It's just like, in fact, I wanted to mention this from the monorail episode too, where like Mr. Burns disguises himself and like everybody looks at him, and then they have that action movie, the action music where Smithers like throws the grappling hook and everything, and then and before they're not even up all the way out of the ceiling yet, before they just keep going with the meeting. And I remember watching that with my friend Mary, and she was like, "I'm guessing they come back to that," and I just laughed. I was like,
Nope,
"Nope."
nope, not at all.
And like all the jokes I just mentioned are before they even get to the park.
Oh, and
It's just so good.
when they like the helicopter ride to the park as well. It's like Itchy and Scratchy Land, where nothing could possibly go wrong. I mean, possibly go wrong. That's the first thing that's ever gone wrong, and that's when you know it's like, oh, something's up, isn't it? Something's gonna
Yeah.
happen here. I am a every time I go to like every year I go to visit my dad in Iowa at Thanksgiving, and every year we stop at this truck stop. It's the world's largest truck stop. Welcome to America, right? Every year I go to the license plate souvenir things and I look for a Bort license plate.
Of
Okay,
course.
everywhere I go, because that's the big joke in this. Because Bart wants to do is he wants to terrorize the people dressed as Itchy and Scratchy, but I think it was what just Itchy.
It was well, no, he goes after both of them.
But he goes to a like souvenir place and he's looking for a Bart license plate, and this joke resonates for us named Mike because somewhere throughout the course of our life something like this comes up where somebody says the name Mike, you turn around and it's like, oh, not you, Mike. I meant to
Yeah.
talk to this one, but this happens with the name Bort
Yeah.
of all names where and it like again this is another joke that's set up and it just like keeps going throughout the episode where like go
We need
Bort
more Bort license plates.
ex-
The gift shop is out of Bort license plates. Yeah, and just the fact because he wants the Bart, and it's like, of course he should have a Bart, and he sees all these other rarer names, but then it gets to Bort, and he's like, oh come on, and you please take it away.
oh no, like that's pretty much
Yeah,
all I
and
was
then
gonna
it's like,
say about that. Like
mommy, can I have a license plate? No, come
no
along,
Bort.
Bort. It's like, are you
And
talking to
then
me? No, that my son is also named Bort. Like, yeah, I guess I'm just quoting the show at this point, but it's
yeah,
just like, yeah, it's such a class, and that's another classic one that everybody like mentions.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and just what a great stab at Disney
Yeah.
for this. Like, once upon a time, before Disney owned Fox, oh boy, The Simpsons went after Disney quite a bit. They still kind of do, but it's
Hey,
not the same.
well, yeah, but you know what? They also went after Fox.
Oh, that very much so.
and
But
this was and this was kind of like, that's, I mentioned this in the article. I just do want to say it at one point. I kind of was reading about it, and I knew this from earlier, just listening to like the commentary and everything. This was a year where they were really trying to, like, they passed some new censorship laws or whatever, so the network was like, hey, we want you to get rid of itchy and scratchy episodes. So how did the Simpsons writers respond to that? They made the most violent possible episode, centered, I mean, with the theme of those two characters exactly. An entire episode about it instead of just the short. And it's like, that was just that in itself is just that hidden behind the scenes comedy. And but yeah, they took lots of shots at Fox too, but oh my god, you are right. Like the dig at just Disney World and the whole corporate thing, like just amazing. And of course Homer coming in and like, hey, do you want to buy some itchy and scratchy money? And he buys all the fake money because it's quote unquote fun. And as soon as he walks through the door,
we don't
or through the
accept
gate,
we don't accept itchy and
yeah,
scratchy money
no,
here.
there are all these shops that have signs, and you just hear him go, ah, like, and like Homer throwing all the different stuff, ripping, and it's like, nobody ruins my family vacation but me. Also, when Homer's packing, it's like, oh, I don't want this to be embarrassing. And then Homer's like, all right, like collar, invisible dog leash, lobster hat, like just, well, I'm packed. But my favorite, the two free passes, but there are five of us. There's two free passes. The Euro Itchy and Scratchy Land was a great dig and everything. The end with the cartoon violence thing where like Lisa throws her shoe at Bart, and then like Marge laughs and then sends Lisa to her room. I don't even think that's the same episode actually.
It might be, but
Yeah, but like that might be from the well, regardless. But the line that my favorite line from this is when Homer and Marge go to Parents Island, quote unquote, and they're like dancing and like they have the New Year's Eve, every single night, blah blah blah, and then like Marge says like, "Wow, it is like," they're both just ogling. It's like it is the '70s, right down to the smallest detail, and then Marge says, the bartender even looks like John Travolta, and then just yeah,
yeah,
looks like.
looks like
That
that.
gets me every single time.
So good.
But this episode starts off fast and does not stop. It just the whole way through is just comedy gold, and it's unique because the main character is all for the Simpsons family just teaming up, and it stood out for me for that. And when I watched it back, I just realized like this is even better than I realized it, than I thought it was before. Any other thoughts on this?
Nope.
Then, real quick, if I can throw in my number two before we get to the two, we have three to talk about here between that, like combined.
We have four
We have
actually.
four combined.
Yep, we have four. So
You're right. You're right. Yep.
your number two. This is the highest one. Is only on one list. So which is impressive considering that it's. I think you put it a good way. This episode has a tinge of seriousness to it. But go
A
go ahead.
tinge. I mean, this is a serious. So as a kid growing up, this was one of those. So I weird thing. I when I was very very little and I was still just learning right from wrong. Like I was in like kindergarten. I had a little thing about like shoplifting. Like
Hmm.
I remember stealing some gum from Jewel, and like there was like a prize bin, and I would like take extra prizes out if I'd win a prize. It was like in kindergarten. And then I don't remember when it was. Like it was very early on, but like a teacher caught me or something like that. And then what they did is they brought the two police officers that had come in from Dare earlier that week to talk to me about stealing and like scare me straight. And it like for lack of a better term, I should say. But yeah, obviously I'm not a thief now. But I do remember that. And I remember not too long after I kind of realized like, oh, I should probably stop stealing. I watched this episode for the first time, and this one always stuck out to me. And it was even serious then. But Bart, under peer pressure, steals a really popular new video game and
Fake
gets
more.
caught on the security camera. And just to kind of sum it up, basically, Marge eventually finds out, and just the disappointment from Marge is just heartbreaking. And so basically, Bart kind of gets estranged from the family. And the reason I put this up is because it's so emotionally powerful. You know, we were talking about the Homer Lisa connection, which we'll talk about more, and the Marge and Bart connection. And I think between all of that, at least as far as the Bart and Marge connection, this is by far the most powerful one, because this is, much like Bart the Mother we mentioned earlier, it's Bart knowing what the right thing is, and then he makes the wrong decision and he regrets it, because on the inside he actually does know what's right, and he did this based on peer pressure. And halfway through the episode, Marge finds out and is very disappointed and kind of estranges him and everything, or he kind of just gets estranged. And you see this very, very real struggle from Bart to be accepted by his mother again, to kind of he feels guilt, which you just really feel hard. He goes over, he's playing with Millhouse, and like Millhouse is getting him in trouble and stuff. And he stops and he talks to Millhouse's mom, and he's like, "Can we like do some mom stuff, basically?" Because he just misses it so much. And then there's one point they're like making the Snow family,
Oh,
and
he has to use the snow from under the tire, the gross stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so heartbreaking too, because he hears Marge laughing and he's like, "It's mom, she's happy again." And he like rushes because he's so excited that she's finally in a good mood, maybe he'll accept her again. But then he ends up making an under the car gray snow thing with stick arms. And it's such a heart-wrenching episode. And then for the reveal of the way it ends, where like Marge thinks that he's stolen something again, and what happened is he goes and he like fixes the family portrait that he ended up ruining, because the security guard grabbed them.
Yeah.
And just the like, God, like this is I'm gonna tear up a little more when we discuss another one, and that's the only one that I think hits me harder than this one. But it's just like, man, it's just so powerful, that relationship between a mother and a son that truly love each other. Because Marge loves Bart so much, and despite all of the Dennis the Menace basically stuff, and him being like a very misbehaving boy, she loves her son so much. And it's just so hard to see her get to a point where she's so disappointed that she just is like, she tucks in Lisa at one point and sings the little like caboose song or whatever, and then just comes and goes good night and
Good
just
night. I just
flips off the
that's
light.
it.
And it's
Yeah.
just like, man, it's just, and because they hit that point again and again and again. And like there are a couple, like Homer comes in with comedy relief. There are still some really funny lines here, and I want to mention one of them. But this is a very serious episode, but it's such a good one. And it tugs on your heartstrings, and there's so many layers to the characters of Bart Simpson and Marge. And just to see Bart go through that whole struggle of making the wrong decision, and the guilt and the regret, and then just at the end trying to make up for it, and he eventually does. And it's just like, man, what, like, this is like, you could stretch that out into a movie, and it could be like an Oscar winning movie. It's just like, gosh, just the emotions they play on are just amazing. And I had this on because it was, and that was a really important one for me early on. Not that, like, it's not like I learned not to steal from this episode or anything. It was like, that was long in my past. That was just, it's just funny to kind of think about that now. But like, I just remember watching this one even as a kid, and this one just was just always very powerful to me. Side note, my friend Kevin, often when I'll ask him what he wants for Christmas, like if he has a list, he'll just say, "Buy me Bone Storm or go to hell."
You mean fake Mortal Kombat? But
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
But the funniest thing to me, like among all of that, is one of my favorite Homer diatribes, where he's like talking about like stealing. Haven't you learned anything from that guy in church, Captain? What's his name? And then he has another one right after. He goes right into the next thing. We live in a society of laws. Why do you think I took you to all those police academy movies? For fun? Well, I didn't hear anybody laughing. Did you? Which is another funny dig at Police Academy. And then, except for that guy that did sound effects, and he goes off on this long tangent of just all these different like sound effects, just completely loses track. He's like, "What was I saying anyway? What was I saying? Oh yeah, stay out of my booze." Like it's like a minute long thing that Dan Castellaneta just nails with his Homer acting. But yeah, I this episode was at least on the list earlier, and then just I went back and watched it, and the more I kept thinking about it as I kept shuffling in my list, the higher this one went, and it almost made my number one, just because it's like this is a very important episode to me personally, and but I also just think like it's one of the best episodes of television that the Simpsons have produced, funny or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Good
I don't know
call.
if you have anything to add, but I'm very
I
passionate about that.
I don't. You put it beautifully, so we'll go with
Thank you.
that. Okay. I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna flip the order a little bit for these because the one that you kind of referenced is coming. I'd like to talk about. So, but I want to talk about my number two first because
You're two.
my number two
Oh
is
yeah,
Lemon of
I agree
Troy.
with you on this.
You had that much earlier in your list. I don't know,
But you know what? It easily could have been in my top five too.
but
It's just
I'm not going to say a whole lot about it because the last three that we're going to talk about are like just all time fantastic episodes.
mhm.
But with Lemon of Troy, this one highlights the Shelbyville versus Springfield rivalry, which like it's a thing throughout the course of the entire series. Like
Yeah.
every town has got their town that they're arch rivals with, even though you don't really understand why you're arch rivals with them. In this case, it has to, the lemon tree, like I guess has to do with like when the towns were finally split up and founded, and like the lemon tree like was planted there as a way to commemorate the splitting and forming of these two towns. Like it's ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
whatever.
Until I went to Portland 10 years ago and realized that Portland, Oregon is actually the representation of Springfield, because the joke is that you never know what state Springfield is in, and they make that joke throughout the series. But when my mind was blown when I realized, oh, Portland is Springfield, because that's where Matt Groening grew up. But until that revelation, I always thought that Springfield had to be in Illinois, and I was only further like I just entrenched myself in that fact until I went to Portland, because then I learned that there's a Shelbyville.
Yeah, right,
It's just like, come on.
right. So,
So yeah,
but just there's a lot of like great sequences in this. A lot of great moments. Whether it's Bart using the Rocky movies to remember Roman numerals. My one of my personal favorites is Millhouse meets another kid named Millhouse. And just he's that sequence where they like find out it's like, is this the like untimely end of Millhouse? But Millhouse is my name, a pain I know all too often. And then Millhouse from Springfield goes, so this is what it sounds like when doves cry. And they like embrace each other. It's like, what a ridiculous thing to say, but it's so funny, just the way that he
yeah,
delivers it. And I don't know, at the very end, once they find Springfield finally retrieves the tree and they're bringing it back, the family from Shelbyville, just shake harder, boy, just shaking their
yeah.
fist. I say that all the time, and nobody understands it except for like you and my hand.
Well, and classic, like as they're going to they like are celebrating, like, yeah, and then the tree hits the sign that says welcome to Springfield, and then they have to go backwards and get it. I love like the junkyard dog, like going after Bart. And Homer's like, don't worry, I got him, and throws the steak, and the dog just jumps up and swallows the steak whole and keeps running. And Homer's just like the look of just surprise and like, oh, faster boy, he's got a taste for meat now. But I love, obviously, first of all, the ridiculousness of this and the lemon tree, like, of this being over a lemon tree. And a side note, I love lemons. So, as time goes on, I love this even more. Grandpa being the old man talking. And then like this one really hits on being a kid, especially as a boy. And like, and they're because the boys are taking this whole thing so seriously. And of course, there's that hilarious, that great moment where they're like, "All right, we're stepping across the line into Shelbyville," and it's like a big moment for them, and they all start crossing over. And then as they're doing that, they show in the background their
Kids.
friends are running
Yeah.
back and forth over the line, just not even a care in the world, flying a kite, and they're laughing. And it's like, yeah, they don't care, But like just the way that like kids think the world works. Like they have like, Millhouse is wearing camouflage, and then he imagines what it's gonna be like when he's wearing camouflage and disappears.
Yeah.
And of course it's like, of course that's not how it works. Or Bart assuming he can read lips. I thought you said you could read lips. I assumed I could. Like just
Or the
and
thing
then
with the spray the spray paint bottles where he
yeah.
he acts like it's going to propel him away, and all it does is just turn his shoes a different color.
Right.
That's it.
And then the disguise, and this is another kind of fun like Simpsons thing too, where like he has the thing where he's got the little scar and then just a Beatles wig, and they don't recognize him, but like as they're talking, it's like, wow, his can thing is like, it's excellent, like they're kind of complimenting him behind his back. And then one of the Shelbyville bullies says like, yeah, and that wig makes him look like one of the Beatles. Like they know, and it's just and it's just, oh my gosh, it's just all those little shout outs to just like how kids think the world works compared to how it actually does. Or they have so many great moments of that. But then also a great Professor Frink moment when he's got the rocket motorcycle, and Bart gets on the run, gets his skateboard stuck in the cement, and he's like, man, I wish I had that rocket motorcycle right now. And out of nowhere, you had your chance, and he flies off. Like, so good. But I'm gonna bring up one line for you that I know is one of your favorites, where Lisa explains to Homer and Marge what Bart is doing by going to invade Shelbyville. Yeah, and then like Marge like gasps, and she says like, Homer, come quick! Bart's given up his tutoring gig and joined a
Joined a
violence
violence
gang.
gang. Yeah. I love that line so much. But even so, just the line where Marge is talking about town pride and everything like that. This town is a part of us all, a part of us all, a part of us all. Sorry, I don't mean to repeat myself, but it'll stick better that way. And it just comes back in Bart's head like later
Yeah,
on.
he's like, it's actually the very next scene. He's just skateboarding. It's part of us all. And he goes, wow, that really does work.
The last thing I'll say, there's two throwaway lines where, boy, a dig at Country Time Lemonade, where they're asking kid where they got the lemons from, in Shelbyville, and the kid goes, "This is Country Time Lemonade. There's not a drop of lemon in this." Like, wow, that was pretty rude. But so the first couple times I played fantasy football, my team name was Team Discovery Channel, and
Yes.
just nobody ever got it.
Yeah.
Nobody ever
Excellent.
gets it. But yeah,
Oh,
I got that from an episode of The Simpsons. So
that's
from this
yeah.
episode.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So,
I when we were at Eastern, my last semester, my senior year, I had to. I think you remember this. I had to take a couple of throwaway classes, so I was a full time student still. But I had almost all my credits. So I took one of the classes I took was a bowling class. And I regularly named our team whenever we would, sign up for whatever, the Holy Rollers. Pin Pals is too obvious, but I was like, okay, Holy Rollers. It's just obscure enough that people won't get it, but some will. And yeah, it was.
That bowling episode is great,
That,
and
that's another one that I wish we could have gotten on this list because it's just God, it's so good. But yeah, I guess I'm good on Lemon of Troy.
So that brings us to your number 4, my number whatever. This is another one that is just big emotional punch. This is, and
You know
Maggie
what?
makes
You
3.
know what? Can we actually talk about this one last?
Sure, that works for me. So our number 1 and number 3, we both had the same 2 for those, but we just switched them,
Yeah,
which was very funny to me. So we'll go
me
with
too.
my number 1 and your number 3 first. So we'll go Lisa the vegetarian.
Can I say something on this one? Or
Yes.
is
Go
no?
ahead.
Like I was kind of
No.
hoping you would just be like no and just keep going.
It would have been a very
That would
Simpsons thing
Yeah,
to
very.
do.
So when you asked me to do this, and the first asked me to like make this list and help out with this whole thing, I didn't know a lot about what my list was going to look like. I had a lot in my mind that like these are going to be on there, and I surprised myself with a lot and blah 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 blah. The one thing I knew was that Lisa the vegetarian was going to be at the top of both of our lists and within the top 2 or 3 because when you and I would have conversations about this over the years, and we'd get to talking about like, what do you think your top Simpsons episodes are? And then we could never answer it. And we never really tried to, but as we'd be kind of like talking about different episodes, we'd always end up coming back to this one, Lisa the Vegetarian, and we'd be laughing and just talking about how genius and amazing this episode is. And we always would make the comment to each other that like, is it the best one? We don't know because we could never say that, at the time but we always agreed that this one was a top 3 Simpsons episode of all time because it's just so good, and it just stuck out to me because that's the only one that we ever really said that about until we did this, this list. And so I knew this was going to be really high, and that's part of the reason it wasn't my number 1 because I almost felt like I feel like we're both going to have this as one, which is maybe not the right way to make a list, but I also really loved my number 1 too, so we'll get back to it. But yeah, this one was very special to me that we had it where it was, even though I knew that we would, because this is one that like this is especially one that you and I have talked about just constantly.
The between just some of the great jokes where you don't make friends with salad, and it's just a little airborne. It's still good. It's still good. All of that stuff. I don't know. It just has such a great lesson on tolerance as well, which
Hmm.
is something I was not expecting. A great guest spot from I'm sorry, Sir Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
Uh,
timeout. Paul and Linda McCartney.
yeah, it's fantastic to, just again, just another 2 guest stars just in a row of amazing guest stars.
Yeah. And they just play themselves, but like it's still, I mean, it's so important. And then of course they play Baby I'm Amazed as, Homer's at the end, he's walking with Lisa on his shoulders because Homer and Lisa fight over, Lisa decides to become a vegetarian and Homer's throwing a barbecue, and that of course clashes. And so there's some really very real serious, the whole Homer Lisa dynamic is in play here. There's some very serious things.
We don't mention this enough, but the Troy McClure videos, just random school, just learning videos and things like that.
So
This
good.
one,
Fuzzy Bunny is great. The DNA one you bring up a lot. But
but
but yeah, we both agree this is the best one.
this one is my favorite. It's called
Yeah.
what? Meet and Me, right?
Meet
And
and You.
oh, Meet and You, and
Yeah.
just I don't know, like the whole sequence is just so funny. Where the little boy just, like Troy McClure is walking through like just a field of cows just on top of them, and then he's just like, "Hi, I'm Troy McClure." He goes through his whole sequence, and then this little boy comes up to him and is like, "But Troy," and he's like, "What the? Oh, hi, blah blah blah," and
Hi
then
Billy. Jimmy. He
Jimmy,
gets the
he
it's,
just
he gets the kid's name wrong.
corrects it.
Um They do the absolutely like terrifying thing with like all the sound of them going through the meat processing plant, which is obviously like, yeah, that's pretty terrible. And then they get throughout out there, and then the kid asks him about the food chain. It's like, your friend hasn't heard of the food chain, and it's just the guy with every animal with arrows pointing to the guy. And then and you don't even have enough time to process all the jokes that are just being thrown at you. Like, because they show the food chain thing, and then he says, just ask this scientist, which is an amazing way to say scientist. And then yeah, you had the guy that's just like, and then like they cut the guy off. He'll tell you, which it's like they just pack 3 jokes into like a second and a half right there. And then he goes on with the whole like, one animal eats another to survive, and they show a few examples, and they just get more and more ridiculous. Starts off the lion and the antelope, and
but
then an eagle carrying away an entire sheep, and then the funniest one by far, a shark just taking down an entire gorilla.
Oh,
Like
that one is so funny to me. But then,
it's just so fast paced. You have to watch it multiple times to catch all the jokes. It's like, that's how good it is. It's like, oh my god, they're just so on fire.
But then, like, even just in that same sequence, you also have, Grade A Moron and Bovine University, which come back again. Just so good.
You
I don't
can't
know.
and then right after the movie, where like Lisa's, you can't honestly expect us to swallow this tripe. All right, on behalf of our friends from the Meat Council, help yourselves to this tripe.
Then,
The independent thought alarm.
Oh, the independent thought alarms, like, Willie, take away the colored chalk. I warned you. I warned you.
They were forged by Lucifer himself.
Just the whole moral dilemma that Lisa gets into when she finally decides she's a vegetarian, eating lamb chops and things like that. Where I actually said this recently because when we had hot dogs recently, and I said that there's shoelaces in hot dogs, and it just did just it went over Gwen's head, but I thought it was funny because I got it from an episode of The Simpsons. So
yeah, I that whole sequence is amazing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
then the part where the lamb goes, Lisa, don't eat me, and things
What did
like
I
that.
ever do to you? Yeah.
And she gets upset, but then the lamb's voice also appears when she's trying to dissect a worm as well. It's like, why
And
does it
she
sound like a
acknowledges
lamb?
it.
Why does it sound like a lamb?
Yeah, great Ralph Wiggum line there too, with the like, "Yay sleep, that's where I'm a Viking." And Miss Hoover too is like, "No, Ralph, we don't have any more. Just lay your head down, just go to sleep while the other children are learning." Like just and the beginning when they go to Storytown Village, that whole thing's funny. The progressive of the like the lambs, the and then the first one walks in the way, and Homer, out of the way,
Out of my
you,
way.
just slaps the other one out of the way. It's just like,
See, and that's another one where the sign at Storytown Village, it just
yeah.
you blink and you miss it, because on the car ride there, like, I think it's good that we're doing something for Maggie, and it's probably fun for all ages, anywhere from 8 to God only knows, because they're
Grandpa's there.
at grandpa. And then you get there and the sign says from ages 1 to 7.5. It's like, oh, well done. Well
Yeah.
done with that one.
One throwaway one that so there are 2 throwaway lines that from episodes we've talked about here. One is from Bart from Australia versus Australia, where people will ask me if I want to do something, and if the answer is yes, I'll go, yes. Yes, I do. I do that all the time. The other one is when they do the really lame, like, mechanical 3 Little Pigs thing, and like it just lifts the house up a little bit, and like Maggie's clapping, and Homer just goes, "That was good, but not great." It's just the fact that he even gives it a positive review is just right. But yeah, the relationship between Lisa and Homer in this is just at the top of its game. The comedy throughout the entire episode is just phenomenal. All the shots at both meat and at vegetarianism are just, at both sides of it, are just great. And like you said, the lessons of tolerance, the joke about the non-alcoholic beer, like, it's just,
What happens if somebody wants non-alcoholic beer? It's like, never come up.
it's never come up. Yeah. And it's just so good for me. It's another one that just from beginning to end is just peak Simpsons comedy, but also, like you said, just a great lesson on tolerance and a great just relationship between Homer. This episode has everything.
Yeah. Speaking of another episode that has everything, your number one, my number three is Lisa on Ice. This one kind of with Lisa and Bart.
Yeah.
The big payoff at the end of this is just the moment where it's coming down to the wire. It's Lisa in goal versus Bart, who's getting
Taking the
ready
penalty
for the
shot.
penalty shot, and just the sequence of just showing all the different scenes where they are working together and they're
Yeah, where
being
they've had each other's backs. They've
yeah,
supported each other. Yeah.
that one got me good.
I think that when I talked to my other friend about this with the emotional endings, he'd always bring up, like what other ones compare to the one that we're gonna talk to, what other ones come close. The only ones he'd always say Mother Simpson, and then I would always say this one,
Mhm.
because this one gets to me too. The beauty of this one for me though is after they show you this really sweet and really emotional moment, you get a chance to recover before the episode ends, because the entire town, all the adults riot because they're so upset over the tie game, and that is just so funny as it is. And
That's
so, like,
that's youth sports for you, right?
right. And they do such a great job of making fun of parents with youth sports. They say it in the commentary too, just the amount of just like carelessness and glee at like children's violence in this
Mhm.
episode is very funny. Who just heads up little girl and just
Mhm.
hitting the, puck at least. But it's just, this is another one that just throughout is just fantastic. And I'm gonna let you do your Ralph one,
Yeah.
but a couple of just really funny Lisa moments when they have the academic alerts on stage in front of everybody, so
Oh
the
yeah.
entire stage they can be embarrassed. And Lisa gets her, Jim, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, and she crumples up the paper and
And she
throws it at a trash can that's
she
nearby, and it doesn't
misses.
even make it halfway, and
Mhm.
it's in front of the entire school, and it's just silent and so embarrassing. But even funnier than that to me is, I think you put this as in the article as the gift, but like when she's trying all the youth sports, she tries basketball, it doesn't work, and then it's volleyball tryouts, and the ball goes up, and she does the little like set motion, and then it hits the top of her spiky haired head, and the ball just deflates, which is funny as it is. But then to add the insult to injury, the coach coming over, children, that was our only ball. There will be no team this year. It's like it goes so much further than you expect them to. God, it's just so funny. But that sweet moment at the end when they have such a just a fierce rivalry, and then suddenly they realize, like, and that's the version of Bart and Lisa where they have, like, we've talked about the parental children relationship. This is the sibling relationship where it's
Mhm.
just, it humanizes them in that way, and it's great. And then there's one line that I know you want to talk to, and I'm going to let you just take it.
Well, I got a couple others to point out. One's not really a line. The part of the episode where Millhouse's tooth gets knocked out, or teeth rather get knocked out, and just like you hear the teeth getting popped out, and then like
Ugh.
Marge picks them up for some sadistic reason, and Millhouse keeps like asking like, "Do you have my teeth?" And everyone's looking at Marge, and she's like, "No." Funny to me. I don't know why, but it's funny to me.
It is.
There is a sequence where Bart and Lisa are fighting, and this is like again typical sibling fighting where you know Bart is like he is waving his arms around and he's like, if you get in the way of this, that's your fault. And Lisa's doing the same thing, but she's kicking, and they're just moving towards each other. And it's just like, if your body seems to occupy the space where I'm kicking, then that's on you. And they finally get to each other, and then they're fighting, and Marge has to come and separate them and be like, okay, we love you both very much. You're not in direct competition with each other. I repeat, you are not in direct competition with each other. And Homer comes upstairs and like, hey, Apu just called. Your Bart's team is playing Lisa's team in the championship game. You'll be in direct competition with each other. And don't go easy on each other because you're siblings. I want you both fighting for your parents' love. Fight, 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 fight. And he's just
Flipping the light switch
flipping the
on
light
and
switch.
off.
And Marge's eyes look sad at him during that because Bart and Lisa are just looking at him, and I just love that sequence. Only
Oh,
to be, only to also have that kind of that same sequence where Homer is looking to eat a pie, or he's be like, "Okay, pie, I'm coming for you. If you
you
get
get
in the way of
eaten.
my, if you get eaten, it's your fault." And he does like a chewing motion towards the pie, and he smacks his head on the wall or the cabinet or something like that, and he just says,
One,
"Screw it," and just
yeah,
starts eating the pie.
that smashing his head on the top is maybe some like one of the absolute best sound editing things for them, where that thud and that whole thing, just like the timing is so perfect for as far as slapstick humor goes. It's one of my absolute favorite like physical comedy moments. And then but also like Homer like threatening Bart to succeed, and it's like, he's like, "Hey, don't forget, boy, if you lose, I'll kill you." And they're all laughing, and they just goes, "Ugh," and it's
Yeah.
like that little moment. But even funnier is when they like Bart wins the game. He's like, "Well, son, you kept up your end of the deal, so I'll keep up mine. Here's your turtle alive and well." And it's like, wait, what? Like, it's
Yeah.
just the adults in this episode are all so just, they have no care about violence, and they're like encouraging it. And so many characters in this episode get a time to shine. So many get such great moments. There's a Ralph line. I know you a couple
Yeah.
that you want to talk about.
Well, the main Ralph line I have from this is just again cold opening where they're doing the academic report or academic alerts, and Principal Skinner announces what they're doing, and he goes, "First academic alert, Wiggum, Ralph," and he just stands up and says, "I won, I won." I say that all the time, and again, nobody knows that it's from The Simpsons, but that's where it's
Yeah.
from. So he gets up on stage and he just it's like, "No, Ralph, you're failing English." And Ralph goes, "Me fail English? That's impossible." Just again, just another great grammar joke. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It's just, gosh, it's what a show. I just overall, what a show. When this show is at its best, it's scary, which I think should lead us to how we should finish tonight off.
so we have the final episode that we're going to talk about, which in hindsight, it probably would be, if I were to redo this, would probably be much higher on my list. But you had it at number 4, and Maggie Makes Three from season
I
6.
I had a hard time not putting this as number one.
You know,
Honestly, I fought with it for a long time because like that ending, which we'll get to, makes me tear up every time without fail. And I don't even have daughters like you do, so it's
yeah,
just like,
it's definitely grown in retrospective because that sequence is just
yeah.
really, really great, and just one of those just unexpected gut punches as well. Like
Yeah, like we were saying it earlier, like the Simpsons will take those, they'll make you laugh, and then they'll take those emotional moments, they'll like yank your strings. They just beat you over the head with it out of nowhere. It's just like you're standing there hysterical, and then suddenly like it's like Indiana Jones, they just rip out your heart. You're like, whoa, like just, or not even rip it out, but it's just like, I compared it in the article to Bart hitting Homer over the back with the chair.
yeah.
I mean, in an emotional level, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but like they tell the story of how Maggie became, the third Simpson child, and just how, I don't know, like Maggie
This is the
Meg.
best flashback episode for sure.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, it is. And Maggie is one of those characters who just doesn't often get a whole lot of attention, but like this is one where she's a little bit more like she herself is not up front and center, but she is definitely somebody who, like, the story of her is
Yeah.
is up front and center.
Well, and the story is centered around her, even though she's not the main character. She's the main, she's the cause of the whole thing. There's another sweet one where, like, I think earlier than this, where they're talking about like Lisa's first word is Bart, and then Homer puts Maggie to bed and is like, "I hope you never say a word." And then she like takes her pacifier out and says, "Daddy," and that's a sweet moment, but it's nothing like this one. So I real quick, this just to kind of break this down in case anybody hasn't seen this one, doesn't understand what we're talking about. This is a flashback episode that just goes back a couple years because they're looking through the photo album during family time, and that's another funny cold open. We're just gonna have to not talk about it to save time. And the kids ask why there aren't any pictures of Maggie, and so a beginning thing which foreshadows the end a lot. So Homer starts telling the family the story of why there aren't any pictures of Maggie in the phone book. And so it goes back to basically it's a story of Homer fixes his budget perfectly and gets out of debt so that he can quit his awful, terrible, just soul breaking job at the power plant and go and work in his dream job of sorts at a bowling alley.
Being a
And
pinball.
like and that part's funny, but like he has a perfectly balanced budget and everything, and then like it's like nothing can we me, Marge, Bart, and Lisa can live perfectly, and they have that whole thing. And so Homer is so happy, and then he and Marge go out to celebrate, and Marge gets pregnant with Maggie, and Homer doesn't know about it, and so he's just going along in his little bliss of his job until eventually it explodes on him. And of course, the whole scene with like Patty and Selma trying to ruin it for him, and all the people in town telling him like the more and more obvious ways of like, hey, like you're having a kid, without saying it until Mo basically says it, and he just takes it all as bowling alley compliments. The horse racing is a sport of King's line cracks me up. But after Homer finds out, it's like he just goes from into despair because he realizes he has to give up his dream job of sorts and go back to this job that he hated in order to be able to afford having this kid, and he doesn't want to do it. And he's almost resentful of this kid that hasn't been born yet. He is resentful of this kid that hasn't been born yet, and he's so reluctant to do this whole thing and go back to this job that he hates so much. And it's kind of heartbreaking to watch. But then at the end, and this is what Hilty and I are talking about here. At the end, Homer, they're at birth, and like Maggie's born, and Dr. Hibbert announces, do you have a new baby girl? And he's like, okay, and gives her a thumbs up, and Maggie grabs his thumb. And right when he does that, he just looks up and he falls in love with his daughter. He just falls in love with Maggie at that moment. And and it's a sweet moment there and everything, of course. And so they go back to present time, and they're like, wow, so you really loved her from the start. And there are times throughout the show where you do actually notice that Homer does love, especially love Maggie. But yeah, you loved her from the start. And he kind of like, oh yeah. And they ask her, so then why no pictures?
Why are there no pictures?
And so a little earlier on, towards the end of this, when Homer reluctantly goes back to the plant, Mr. Burns gives him the job back and says, not so fast. It's company policy to give returning employees the plate. And Smithers is like, no, 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 that's the plaque. But it's a demotivational plaque, and so they just basically drill onto just right in front of them a big sign that says, "Don't forget, you're here forever," just to crush what's left of his spirit. So at the end of this, the kids are asking, okay, so then why aren't there any pictures of Maggie? After she's born, you loved her from the start. And he goes, oh, there's pictures. I keep them where I need the most cheering up. Oh God, I'm starting to tear up just thinking about this.
Oh, and
then it pans to a whole bunch of pictures of Maggie and Homer and Maggie together at his workplace, and it kind of goes to the sign, and then it zooms out, and he's got the pictures placed over the sign so that "Don't forget you're here forever" is covered in just a way that the sign now says "Do it for her." And God damn, it gets me every time.
It hits a lot harder when you're a parent as well. It's
I can only imagine. Like I'm screwed when I have a kid. I mean, geez, I can barely stand it now. But it's just it's so unexpected of how powerfully emotional that is, and it goes right back to what I've been saying from the very beginning of the article and the episode, is that through all of his buffoonery, Homer Simpson loves his children. And there is no more powerful moment to describe that than this ending. And it's just like, man.
So good. So good. And
So
again,
I covered a lot of it. I don't know. I'm sure you've got more on it, but
I don't actually. That is the crux of the main thing of this episode, and kind of just showcasing a little bit of everything about what we love
yeah.
about the Simpsons. So
Yeah, and
um,
that's what makes them great is they're so funny, but people don't realize just how complex and powerfully emotional that show can be.
yeah. Well, I think that covers it. So hey, man, appreciate you coming on and talking to me
Yeah,
about the Simpsons, and
glad
just
to.
you've been contributing to the article. So
We only went out like 2.5 hours over time,
a little just a little bit longer than that, so it's all good. So Whildin, where can the people find you? Do you anywhere you
Right,
want to send
yeah.
people for
Right. I
social
don't right
media?
now I don't want people to find me. I will occasionally contribute to some of Hilty's articles on Retrospecticus. There is another blog website I occasionally contribute to called Fancy Boys. It's just kind of a mix. It's some comedy, it's some pop culture and just stuff like that. I did write like a long article about a baseball trip that I took that a lot of people seem to really enjoy. But yeah, I don't really want to be found yet, so I'm gonna just leave it at that, and you'll hear about me through Hilty, I guess.
All right, that works for me. Da 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 da.
That's going to do it for this episode of SPDM TV. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website. Check out our website at com. Shout out to High Flyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logo. Greatly appreciate their support. And if you have any creative needs, contact them at highflyercreative.com. Check out the other shows in our network. We've got a lot of great content on there, and I'm really proud of the work that everyone's doing. We've got a ton of different things that you could ask for. So check out the other shows on our network. And if you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at gmail.com. Until next time, happy watching, friends.